Councillor Rosidi, it's Ian here. It's 6:30 and we do have a quorum of councillors present.
Okay, we'll start the meeting. Okay, any apologies for tonight's meeting? No?
There's an apology. There's an apology.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Stand there.
Yes.
Vicky, there is an apology from the Mayor, Darcy Byrne.
Yeah. Okay, any disclosure of interest?
We'll just need a motion to accept the apology from Councillor Byrne.
I'll move that.
I seconded it.
People might want to mute as well.
Okay, disclosure of interest. No disclosures of interest?
Just
Okay, sorry?
Acknowledgement of country, do we have?
Yes, acknowledgement of country. And 1 minute of quiet contemplation. Okay, and can I move?
Do you want to do the acknowledgement of country, Vicky?
Yes.
Councillor Rosidi, would you like me to do the acknowledgement of country for you?
Yes, please, because my thing keeps going on and off. I might have to change rooms.
At this meeting of the ordinary council meeting, we acknowledge country of all the elders past, present and future.
And we note that we are all together, of course, meeting on the land of the Gadigal and Wangal people of the Eora Nation.
Councillor Rosidi, we can move to any disclosures of interest now.
Any disclosures of interest? None? Okay, we're moving the confirmation of meetings, are we?
Yep, I'll move that.
Happy to second it, Councillor Hesse.
Thank you.
We'll just need to have a vote on the minutes.
Okay, everyone put their hands up for the Councillor Lockie,
So I'm happy to, yep.
Councillor McKenna, Councillor Skander, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Macri, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Hesse. Who else have I got here? Councillor Steer, yes. Councillor Kiat and Councillor Passes and Councillor York. Okay.
Deputy Mayor, sorry.
That's okay.
Deputy Mayor, may I move the mayoral minute instead of the mayor, please?
Yes.
Take it off. Oh, excuse me. Councillor Pass is here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I tried to speak previously. I want to make a comment about the minutes. The first item on the agenda at the last meeting, I did not vote in favour of delegated authority on traffic issues. I tried to come into the meeting on the 2 issues and I could not get in. So I don't know why I'm down as voting for it. I was against it. You'll note that if you go back to the recordings, I did not speak for the 2 items. I did vote against the skate park issue, but I did not vote in favour of delegated authority on traffic issues.
Councillor Rosidi, can I move that we adopt the minutes with the amendment that Councillor Passes voted against item 1?
Yes. A second of that?
That we recommit the vote, basically.
No, you don't have to recommit the
No,
vote.
no.
No, just move the minutes.
Okay, well, I thought we'd done it already, but that's okay.
with that deleted. I did not vote. I did not
Councillor
participate.
passes that she didn't vote.
I will second Councillor Kiat's motion. This is
Okay,
Councillor Steer.
go through the show of hands again, Ian, yes?
I think that's
That's
everyone.
correct. Yep.
Councillor Drury, Councillor Hesse, Margarita Cruz, Councillor Macri, Councillor Simolis, Councillor Blocky, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Skander, Councillor Stee, Councillor Kiat, and Councillor York, and Councillor passes. Thank you. Can I move a motion that Councillor Macri take over the meeting for tonight?
I'll second that.
Okay? Everybody agree? Show of hands. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, I want to be recorded as dissenting. This is Councillor Steer.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we have a reason why you're dissenting?
Because the Deputy Mayor's job is to chair the meeting when the Mayor is away.
Yes, Councillor Steve, but I have a sore throat and
It's also up to the council to nominate anybody else that they would like to chair the meeting if we all agree. It's no big deal.
The matter's been determined. Can we move on?
Okay. Basically, there's a minute. Councillor Drew, you wanted to move that in place of the Mayor?
If I may.
Yes, you can.
So councillors, it's a fairly straightforward mayoral minute, which sets up a task force to coordinate economic recovery as best we can at a local level. We'll obviously be seeking to work with the state and federal government in their measures, but it will be a bringing together of 7 people, including the business chambers and people from various sectors, to see what we can do locally in support of the moves which are being taken at a state and federal level. I'd urge all councillors to support the resolution.
May I speak?
Yes, Councillor Passes.
Yes, I think that's a good initiative, but I would like to move that councillors that are interested should be a part of that task force. You have other stakeholders, we really need to know who they are. And if it's a recovery, it needs to be people that do have business background. And I suppose out of the whole 15 councillors, everyone would have something to offer. I don't think it should be a nominated number. I think it should be interested councillors and to be all involved in this. This is going to be mammoth. We've got a lot of things to do. We've got a lot of catching up, and issues are going to arise that we'll have to deal with them as it comes up.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Passes. Any further speakers on that?
Councillor Macri?
Yes, Councillor Stamoulis.
Yeah. Look, I've got reservations about the mayoral minute. It is far too broad a task force for the whole of the municipality. We have major business areas focusing in virtually every single ward, and I'm not sure whether this one task force will have the capability to be able to manage all of that. We're talking about thousands and thousands of businesses. We're talking about major centres as well as minor centres. And I'm supportive of the concept, but I think the approach really needs to be given some very, very detailed thought. Possibly this could be an overarching task force for a variety of different business subcommittees. I tend to think that the spirit of the motion is very good. I have no issue there, but the practicality of it and the way that we do it, I think needs to be defined carefully so that we do achieve the best interests of our major centres, and there's 3 of those, and many of our minor centres. So I don't know how we're going to achieve that if we vote on the motion tonight, but I hope it's something that will be in the minds and perspective of councillors. Thank you.
I'll just try.
Can I second the motion? Because
Yes, Councillor McKenna, you can second the motion. Did you want to speak on it?
Just to acknowledge that this really does not need to be a big event. It needs to be a small number of people. I think people like the business chambers can have representatives that can actually speak for them, and other major areas can also do the same. I think if it's too big, it will be unmanageable. And I mean, I'm sure these various people can go back to their various organisations and seek advice and consensus. But I would think a small group is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor De Cruz, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I guess I'm just echoing Councillor Stamoulis and Councillor Pass's comments about input from more councillors into the plan. And I was just curious when they'd be reporting back to council. I noticed that the EOI for the presumably that's for the membership of the task force will be reported to council. But I think even the rest of the activities need to come back to council. And I mean, I don't know whether once a month there's a report back to council of what's happening with the task force. And also, I think there is a real issue with we do have a phenomenal number of small businesses in the inner west. When I was in Canberra at the last national local government conference, I got a map of how many small businesses are registered in the inner west. So it's actually there's I think over 60,000. So there's a real diversity of businesses and contributing to the economic well-being of the inner west. I think one other thing that's really quite interesting is also the inner west is probably benefiting from the lockdown because people are working from home and those kinds of things. So yeah, so I think that there's a real diversity, and I think to have too small a group trying to make the decisions for the whole of the inner west and the diversity of businesses that are in the west is quite problematic. So I think we need to have much more transparency and engagement with the community on this stuff. So rather than just powering ahead with a group of 7 deciding what to do, I think we need to have much more involvement. Councillors can be involved in consulting their community, perhaps putting on online to find out what kinds of things we need to do, because the different sectors will need different kind of support. So my comments are that we do need to have something to come back to council, and I don't know if Councillor Drury and McKenna would accept an amendment that that the task force engages with and reports back to the council. Engages with the councillors and reports back to council. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just highlight to you that the results of the EOI will be reported back to council on the June 9 ordinary meeting. So it is going to come back to council. I see this task force as a group that is in contact with the wider community, the business sector. So I expect the chambers of commerce to be heavily involved and using their networks to gather information where assistance is needed. And then it comes back to council. They're like every other committee. They have to come back. They have no power. They have no budget. They have to come back and report to the councillors for the councillors to agree what has actually been established or the path they've seen they want to take us on. And it'll always come back to the council for those decisions. That's the way I'm reading this. I'm happy to support it and get the report back on June the 9th. It's only a couple of weeks. And councillors have the ultimate say in the oversight of it.
Chair.
Yep, Councillor Cat.
Can I ask a question through you to the
Yes.
Chief Executive Officer?
Yes.
Look, my first question is just about that issue of few people have raised it about councillor involvement. Is it envisaged that councillors will be able to participate in the meetings of the recovery task force?
Through to the
Councillor,
CEO.
that is a matter for councillors to determine. This is simply a proposal from the mayor.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you, Michael.
Can you hear me now?
No, we can't hear the CEO.
You're very, very faint, Michael, almost indetectable.
Quite sure why, but let me speak more.
No,
loudly.
no, can't hear you, Michael.
Can you help?
Something wrong with your microphone or something.
Right. I'll come back.
Okay. Well, I'll fire off my next question, and perhaps Michael can answer both. Through the chair, I'm concerned that the task force, which is looking at, I understand, economic recovery in the Inner West, I think it appropriately has business representation. I'm wondering whether consideration was given to participation of union representatives or maybe tenant organization representatives, given that I think that's a useful perspective in any discussion about economic recovery.
Okay, so that's to the CEO as well. Yep. Michael, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm not sure that you can hear me.
It's very echoey.
I can't really hear Michael at all, to be honest. Just a
Okay.
faint whimper.
This is up to councillors.
Oh, sorry.
So can I be of some of assistance, please, Councillor?
Yes, please.
I'm happy to
please.
redirect my question to Mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I be of some assistance? And point out that clause F says that the terms of reference will come back to the 9th with the representatives for adoption. So we basically have some time to have those discussions. What we're seeking to do is to get a workable number of people from the community on board from a variety of different sectors, including the business chamber, to have that discussion. So we could spend a lot of time now, and then we could spend the same time when we adopt it later on. So I'm sure we can have discussions out of session between now and then. We just want a process to start attracting the interest rather than hand picking people, as we put out an expression of interest to the community and see who from the different sectors wants to put forward. I would suggest, Councillor Keir, if you could always get into some people's ears and suggest they nominate once the expression of interest, or draw it to their attention once it goes out. So it's a fairly simple procedural motion to put out for an expression of interest for 7 people who might be able to assist us in this process.
Can I speak briefly then? Thanks, Mark. That's helpful. Look, I think that's a good point with respect to the terms of reference. I think we can, at that meeting, decide what role councillors can play. I think, participation seems like an obvious option. I don't know that we want all councillors to be able to participate and vote, because I did notice when I had a quick read through the background that there is some voting function associated with the permanent members. I think it is important to talk about the issue of who is going to be involved in this task force now, because if we're talking about putting out an EOI, obviously we're only going to get back people based on the kind of information we put out in the EOI. So based on what's in the document that I just read, it doesn't look like any of the permanent members, we were looking for anyone from a union background or someone who works with tenants. I think, and there are just 2 that came to me when I read this 5 minutes before the meeting. So Councillor Drury, perhaps you can undertake to liaise with the Chief Executive Officer on that issue when putting out the EOI to consider whether that would be an appropriate inclusion, and at least at this stage, see whether we get any interest from union groups or tenant groups, or, you know, I know that we have the other committee that the Mayor is chairing with the social services groups. Perhaps a representative from that group would also be appropriate.
Happy to do so, Councillor Kit.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kit. Councillor Porteous?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, apologies for being late, technology problems. I'm assuming that Councillor Macri has been elected chair for this evening, as neither
Yes.
the mayor and the deputy mayor are available.
Yes.
This is a point of order. As an appointed chair, the mayor, you're not the mayor, and you don't have a casting vote. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Look, I would like to move a few amendments to this, as I actually think we need to be a bit more clear about what it is that we want. I have just forwarded that to all councillors as well, and I've forwarded to the minute taker as well. But I think that it's actually the point that Councillor Stamoulos was making about representatives of the various different areas within the Inner West is really important. So I'd like to move that at least 5 of the 7 members need to be acknowledged representatives of each of the 5 ward areas. I think it's important that, you know, there is at least one of those people that's associated with the Balmain ward, one is associated with the Ashfield ward, because they're really very different business areas. And I think we do need to have that within that. So I'd like to move that as the first point. The second point, I agree with Councillor Passes. I do think, and that was actually in the initial mayoral minute as well, it was added to it, and there was agreement with the councillors that councillors be invited to attend and participate in the task force. Look, to be honest, we're not going to get 15 councillors turning up to this task force, but I think if there are councillors who have knowledge and expertise in business, and I certainly count myself as one of those, and I know there's a couple of other councillors as well who have that background, expertise and knowledge, then I think they can contribute really positively. You know, myself, I ran a successful business during the last recession in the 1990s. And I'd like to be able to contribute my knowledge to that task force, maybe in a way that would be positive. And so I'd like to actually have that as part of the what we're adopting tonight. I also think it's important that the EOI is not determined by staff, but it's determined by the council. So to make that clear, I'd like the EOI to come back to council and be determined by council on the 9th of June. I'd also like to note that there can be a larger number than 7 members of the council if the council, there's then 7 members on this task force, if the council so determines. I mean, that would be a determination for the council on the night. But if at the end, when we have a look at the EOIs, we say, well, actually there's 9 people here who are really going to contribute positively to this task force, then I'd say, well, let's put those 9 people on the task force because we're going to get a better outcome. So I'd like to move that as well. And finally, I think to reinforce the fact that we don't want this task force going off with making decisions without the oversight of council. So I think we need to say up front right now, recommendations of the task force must come to council for consideration and adoption. So I'd like to move those as 4 additional amendments to this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Porteous. I'll put your amendments to the actual movers of the motion. Are you happy to accept those amendments, Councillor Drury and Councillor McKenna?
No.
No. Okay.
So I'll second Councillor Porteous' amendments.
Okay.
Councillor Macri, can I speak to the amendments?
If you really want to, yes.
I think they're excellent amendments. I would ask that in point I, that rather than saying there can be a larger number than 7 members, I'm wondering if Councillor Porteous would be happy to change that, the minimum number of business/chamber members to be 12. The minimum number.
As the question has been asked of me, Councillor Macri, I'm happy to respond to it.
Sure. Yes.
I think, Councillor Stamoulis, I hear what you're saying, but I think determining the number beforehand would be better to see who it is. This opens the opportunity for 12 to be there, but it also clarifies that, you know, we have obviously the minimum is 7. And if we do find there's other people that are very worthy that we want to include it, then we have that option. But to define the exact number beforehand, I think is probably not the best way to go at this stage.
I've said the minimum should be 12.
Yeah, so I don't agree with minimum being 12. I'm happy for you to move that as a separate amendment if you want to.
No further speakers?
I'd like to speak. I'd like to speak.
Anna? Yep.
Well, just to say that I think that all of this discussion, instead of having it on the fly right now, where there's clearly different views about the number of representatives and the makeup of the body, etc., I don't understand why we would try to determine all of that in specificity now, when the motion as it stands allows for a discussion about both the membership and the terms of reference as laid out. I just think it's a fairly simple process. As the mover and the seconder have said, I think all we're trying to do here is get this started. There's time in between for councillors to consider the terms of reference. There's time in between for councillors to consider possible nominees to the task force. But the principle is that it should be as small and agile a body as possible. It should not replace the various other committees of council that we have through the local democracy groups, the other channels for consultation that we have. It is not intended to be a body that includes a member of every single one of those committees. It is not intended to become unwieldy in that way. There is a very specialised and particular need arising out of the very particular circumstance that we find ourselves in, where we just need a quite specific set of expertise and information on top of and in addition to the very good consultation mechanisms that we already have. So we have a body that helps us consider and think about housing issues. We have the various other local democracy groups. This isn't intended to replace that. And no doubt, each of those groups, which are continuing to meet, will be very focused on the question of recovery. So I think let's all just relax, take a deep breath. We'll have the opportunity to consider some of these questions as this process rolls out. And rather than trying to do it on the fly and come back and forth with different numbers that I feel like, unfortunately, is the practice of this council to try to operate like an auction, let's just get this moving and we can consider it over the coming weeks.
Okay. Councillor Drury, do you want to close?
I believe Councillor York has said everything that I would wish to say. So
okay.
Close with those thoughts and urge support for a fairly simple motion to get this going.
Okay, well, we'll start then.
Macri, just as a point, point I on my amendments, can I separate that out and make that 2 separate points? So the first point would be the EOI should come back to council and be determined on this June 9th. Make a separate point, there should be a large number, there can be a larger number than 7. So yeah, so it's an additional point now. Yeah.
How do you do it? Come here.
All right. So we're going to just move the amendments.
I'm happy for them to be considered in seriatim. So
now it's on or
okay. All right.
Through the chair,
Yes.
Councillor Macri.
Yes.
Point F of the mayoral minute says the AI come back to council. The results be reported for determination. So it's the same as what's in the amendment.
Yeah.
No, sorry. My understanding, the way that's written, is that the results of the EOI, it doesn't say that we determined the EOI. I mean, my reading of that is that the staff tell us what they've decided. I mean, if that's not the way, that is perhaps the CEO could qualify that, but I'm reading that the staff would have already decided the EOI. That's the way I'm reading E. That's why I put that other point up.
We have no interest in making that decision, Councillor.
So the intention is for the council to make the decision.
Well, that is clearly what is expressed.
Okay. No, that's fine. In that case, I can remove I. Thanks.
Through the chair, just one procedural matter.
Yes.
The councillor that chairs a council meeting has a casting vote under the Code of Meeting Practice and also the Local Government Act.
Okay, thank you for that, man. Hopefully I won't have to use it, so that's fine. Okay.
Bye, Rochelle.
Councillor Macri, can you hear me?
Yes, Councillor Passis, I can.
Well, can you tell somebody to stop muting me?
I don't think you're being muted.
Yes, I am. Other councillors come in 2 and 3 times. Each time I've tried to come in, I've put my hand up. I've been on the screen and it's the stop.
I don't see, I only see 1, 2, 3, about 4 councillors on the screen, Councillor Passis, at a time.
I put my hand up when I tried to get in. It's lucky I've got my young student here, or you people would be cutting me off all night.
No, not at all. You're right. You need to say something, Councillor Passis?
No, I won't be. I do not want to be muted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so
Just a point of order, Councillor Macri, as you're chairing the meeting, you should be able to see all of us. Perhaps you could ask whoever's doing the tech tonight to make sure, because there is the function that you can see everybody at one time. And as the chair, I think it's important. Otherwise, you can't see people with their
I've got to scroll through it. I'll scroll through. When we're doing the counts for the votes, I'll scroll through. Okay, so you want your amendments voted on in seriatim individually.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll put the first amendment, which is G. At least 5 to 7 members need to be acknowledged representatives of each 5 wards. For the motion, hands up. I can see Councillor Porteous, Councillor Steer, Councillor Passis, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Kiat. So I then presume that the balance of the councillors are against. So what is the number on that then? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in support. So that means it's carried. Okay. We'll go to the next one, which is councillors are to, oh, I just lost it. Where councillors are to be invited. Well, I think that's just changed. Invited to participate in the task force.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just clarify? Did Councillor Lockie vote for that amendment?
No, I was just going to say I didn't vote for that amendment.
So she was recorded as a vote for. Can we just check that vote? I'm just really unclear about how that was counted.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Councillor Rosidi, were you for the motion? Because we couldn't see you.
Hello?
Councillor, were you for that amendment?
No.
No. Okay. All right. So you got to be moved to the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh my God. I'm going to use a casting vote then. Okay, so that's been defeated.
That's good. I'm glad you used your casting vote.
God. Okay, the next one is councillors are invited to attend and participate in the task force. Councillors, those in favour, show your hand.
My hand's up.
Okay, I can see from that screen, I can see Tom Kiat, I can see Pauline Lockie, I can see Marguerite De Cruz, Colin Hesse, John Stamoulis, Rochelle Porteous, Louise Steer, and Councillor Passis. Okay, is that everyone in favour? Yes.
That's 8 in favour.
8 in favour. Well,
Okay.
That's carried. That's good. That's determined. Okay, the next one is there can be a larger number of 7 members, so the council determines. Okay, those in favour?
Than 7 if the council determines.
Yeah. Those in favour?
I'm in favour.
Okay, I can see Councillor Porteous. I can see Councillor Passis. I can see Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Kiat, Councillor Steer. And that's it. So how many is that?
Through the chair, that's 8 votes, the same vote
8.
as the previous
Okay, well,
amendment.
then that's carried in. That's good. Okay. All right. Recommendations of the task force must come back for council consideration and adoption. Okay. Is everyone happy with that?
Yes.
Is there anyone against that? We'll change it up. Councillor York is against.
Just before Councillor Macri.
Yes. Sorry, what was that?
Just take the vote for. It's because confusing enough.
Okay, all right. We'll go for those 4.
I'm in favour.
Okay, we've got Councillor Porteous, we've got Councillor Rossetti, Councillor Passis, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Lockie, and is that your hand up, Lucille, or down? Up. Okay, all right, and I'm in on that, and then Councillor Steer and Councillor Kiat. Councillor York, you no? Yeah, she's up. Yes. Okay, Councillor Skander, you yes or no? You're a yes. Okay, well that's carried. Okay, we will now put the substantive motion up. All those in favour, put your hands up. I see, has everyone got their hand up as I can see it?
Yes.
Yes, unanimous. Thank you. Now, we skipped one step at the beginning. We do have a condolence motion, which we always actually have first. Councillor Hesse would like to move that condolence motion.
Through the chair, because it would have to, what we'll need to do is it will have to be an urgency motion that we speak to, and then as the chairperson, you would have to rule it urgent, and then we need to vote for urgency before the motion's considered.
Okay, Colin, I'll make it easy for you. I'm happy to, if you just say why it's urgent.
Well, okay, thanks, Councillor Macri. It's urgent because of course, Jack Mundey, who was a resident of the inner west and a former Ashfield Citizen of the Year, died on Sunday, which was after the cut-off date, that's formally why it's urgent. And
okay, well, I've heard enough. That's urgent for me.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate that.
Okay, do you want to move forward with that?
Yes.
We just need to vote, Chair, on urgency. Someone needs to second the motion and then vote.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Rossetti. Okay. Put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Yes. Done. Okay, Councillor Hesse.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate your ruling and the support of councillors on this matter. And of course, as is when you're trying to move between screens, I've just lost where I had it on my own screen. So I'll simply talk ad hoc. And I hope all councillors received their motion. I do apologise for being slow to send it this afternoon. I had to go to the doctor myself, which spent longer time than I expected. Jack Mundey probably needs a little introduction to everyone, whether you were of his political views or not. To say that Jack Mundey made a contribution to Australia would be a bit like saying the sun comes up in the east in the morning. I think Jack was remarkable for many reasons. A working class man from far north Queensland who came to Sydney in the 1950s to play rugby league for Parramatta, the wrong team, but a traditional working class way of making your way, who worked on building sites, who became radicalised in his experience of life as a young man, joined the Communist Party, and as the Builders Labor got involved in the union, the Builders Labour's Federation was then a fairly corrupt union, and Jack was part of a team of people who got rid of the old leadership and cleaned it up, and the benefits, of course, were the members through improved pay and improved occupational health and safety in today's language. Jack and his team were there for a while, and then in the early 70s, the Liberal voting and the Conservative women of Kelly's Bush, having got nowhere with their local Liberal members regarding a major development on the Parramatta River, which would have seen the eradication of the remnant bushland in that area, came to Jack Mundey and said, can you put a ban, colloquially a black ban, to stop the work? Jack listened to them and said, well, look, you know, I think that's a good idea, but I'm not going to make the decision. It's up to the members. And he said to the women, well, you speak to the members. And they did. And with Jack's support, the members said, okay, we think that that is a value to the community. And indeed, it is a value beyond just Hunters Hill. It's a value to the people of Sydney and to a college, to the kind of society that you want. And that campaign, of course, as we know, the battle for Kelly's Bush was successful, notwithstanding the governor of the day being very unhappy about it. To say, it went on and on and on, of course. Jack was approached then, and the BLF were approached then by community groups all over Sydney, but particularly in his inner Sydney, where there were significant pressures around development. And it's no exaggeration to say that the work of Jack Mundey and the members of the BLF and the community combining have saved the historic Rocks area, the birth of modern Australia, the birthplace of modern Australia, and many, many more places, including places like Centennial Park, places that are greatly valued to this day by the people of Sydney. And indeed, the people of the world. And of course, the name Green Band itself. Petra Kelly, a young woman from then West Germany, came out here, she'd heard of it. She came out, she spoke to Jack Mundey and many and others, and took that name back to form a new political party in West Germany, Die Grünen, the Greens, a movement which has since spread around the world. The first time the Greens was named as a political party. Now, again, whether you're sympathetic to that or not, it's a major political moment. And Jack Mundey and the people around him were the people who began that process. And without going into any more great depth about Jack's life, I'd say that Jack would have always made the key point that no matter who you were, whether you were conservative, middle of the road, or more radical in your views, if you had a good idea, he'd listen to you, and if he thought it had value, he'd support it. He was the epitome of a non-sectarian person. At the same time, he was a very proud and long-term member of the Greens, and supported, I know, Councillor Porteous, but many others as well, here tonight and perhaps listening in and further afield. I'd also say about Jack that he wasn't a big noter of himself. In all the times chats I with Jack, it was all, how are you going? He wasn't telling you his story about him. He didn't talk about that at all, which is great.
Councillor, your time has expired. I'm happy to give you a little bit more leniency, but we'll have to move an extension if you think you need it.
If you can give me another 30 seconds, Vic, that'd be great.
Yep. I'll move extra 30 seconds. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Declare that unanimous.
Thanks, Vic. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Look, to wrap up, I think the important thing that I'd say, having the politics he had, was it's about solidarity. That's that you think about your community, about the big picture, and you bring people together in peace and with honest intention, and that's how you help build a better, fairer world. And it's about sharing information in a true spirit of cooperation. And I think we are in debt to Jack Mundey and all those around him, and I certainly pay my regards to him and my respects to him, and of course his wife Judy Mundey too. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. As a seconder for the motion?
I'll second it.
I saw Councillor Lockie, she popped up first on the screen. Okay. Is any other further speakers on this condolence motion? Councillor Porteous?
Yes, look, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hesse, for bringing forward this condolence motion. I got to know Jack Mundey in his later life. He was a man of compassion, of courage, of conviction, and unbelievably admirable with his moral and his principled way that he went about motivating people to become active in their communities and to stand together in solidarity against what has often been the worst kind of corruption and the worst kind of degradation of our environment and of our communities. I found him to be a very humble person in many ways, and that was something that I also admired enormously, because being a humble person, he was also a real leader in the genuine sense of the word, because people wanted to follow him and do what he did, and in a very quiet way. Often he showed us how you are effective with your community, and so much of it comes down to that simple word over and over again, respect. And that's as well what he showed so well, because the fact that he was able to work across very large sections of our community and our society for the better good of both the environment and for society was a lot about the fact that there was a genuine respect there for each and every person that was involved in a community action, and a real willingness to listen to everybody and everybody's position. It's something that I think everybody who's had the opportunity to be involved with Jack comes away feeling very much enriched by that experience, and by the way that he really does show the way forward, the way that we should be all working with our communities, and we should all be working with each other. So I have only gratitude for Jack, and very deep respect and admiration for his vision and his leadership over so many years. And I'd just like to give my most heartfelt condolence to Judy and to his family and friends, and as well to his very wide Greens and community family. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further?
May I speak to it, please?
Yes, Councillor Lockie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few words, and thank you, Councillor Hesse, for bringing this motion. Look, I was really devastated to see the news that he'd passed yesterday. I think for anybody who has an interest in activism, and particularly urban issues and planning issues and environmentalism, his character looms large over all of us. He's a huge inspiration and a hero to so many, and it doesn't bear thinking about what Sydney would look like if it wasn't for the campaigns that he helped drive through the BLF, and by working, as Councillor Porteous said, in real partnership with the communities and a huge cross-section of people in order to achieve those outcomes. And I didn't have a huge amount of contact with him, but what I will always be grateful for is the fact that even very late in life, with the campaign against WestConnex, he was there and he was vocal against it. And he very generously gave of his time when councillors from Councillor Philip Talis from Clover Moore's office and I went to meet with union officials to ask for their support on the campaign. And look, you know, I'm walking into rooms full of tough union people is not generally what I do on a day-to-day basis, and that would have been quite an intimidating and frightening meeting if it were not for the fact that he was there, and if it were not for the deference that all of those people so clearly held him in so many years later. So that wouldn't have been a particularly easy meeting for him to attend. It was only a few years ago, but it meant a very great deal to me and to many others of us within the campaign that he loaned that support to us, and similarly so for recent campaigns again, to save public housing, to save Sirius and so forth. He always showed up and always gave what he could to those campaigns, and I think Sydney owes him so much.
Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Any other further speakers, or we can put it to the vote? I'll just scroll through. Councillor De Cruz, you're waving your hand. Councillor De Cruz, we can't hear you. Did you want to speak?
Yep, sorry, I've just found the button. I'd like to thank Councillor Hesse for bringing this condolence motion, and it has been a great loss. Certainly, I attended the unveiling of a plaque in Annandale to Jack Mundey and the Green Bands, and the significance of those actions. And I guess it wasn't just the advocacy; it was the effectiveness, which meant that large parts of the inner west, Glebe, Annandale, and Leichhardt were actually saved, and also it went on to influence, no doubt, the concept of conservation areas, which has protected large areas of the inner west, including Haberfield and Petersham and Stanmore. So I think the legacy this man leaves behind is significant, and hopefully we can carry that through in the future too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor De Cruz. If there's no further speakers, have I missed anyone? Please speak up now. No, haven't missed anyone. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
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 I see everyone's hands up, so that's good. That's a unanimous condolence motion. Okay, thank you, Colin, for bringing that up. Okay, now we'll move back onto the agenda. Item 1, Councillor Jury, you're trying to get my attention. The Ashfield Aquatic Centre. You're waving, but we can't hear you.
I'm just struggling to unmute. Councillor Macri, may I move the acceptance of the report in relation to the Ashfield Aquatic Centre?
Yep, I'm happy to second that.
And I would like to place on record my thanks to Michael Deegan and particularly Kathy Edwards-Davis for the work that has been done to bring to fruition the Ashfield Aquatic Centre. It's part of my little COVID walk around the block, and so I've been monitoring its progress on a almost daily basis.
Okay.
This is a major project for our community.
May I speak next?
You can, Councillor Passos, I've got you down.
Remind me to, no. It is a major project. It is going to come in for the summer season, and the cost control that has been shown in relation to this matter has been spectacular. I think this is a community facility that the majority of people in Ashfield have wanted for a long time. And it is great to see it come to fruition. And I think in the current environment, it just reminds us how important these community facilities are to us, because it is being missed by so many. I place on record once again my thanks to the officers who are working with our contractors to pull this off.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Passos.
Yes, I'd like to raise a few issues on this.
Yes.
The report tells us nothing. We're told it's on target and it's on budget. There are no figures. Also, what hasn't been said in this report, a few weeks back we received a few words from the at a council meeting maybe, when I brought this up. I was told by the general manager, yes, it's on target, except the floating floor is stuck coming from Canada because of COVID. This report doesn't say anything about the floor. Is it still coming? Is it here?
Is that a question through the CEO? I'll put that through.
Yep, it's here, Councillor, and it's being installed. It's all good news.
Well, that would have been good to be in the report.
It's happened as part of the update between the formal report and today. So it's great news. We're all good.
So it was put in today.
It's all under control today.
Yep, that's. I'm not saying it's not under control, but I'm just saying what we were left with the last time we mentioned the aquatic centre was the floor. There was a bit of problem with it. It would have been good to have in this report that it's arrived.
Reports are a week before and it's all okay. So we're on track and it'll be a terrific investment by the council and the community.
I would also like to say 3 words, it's on budget, I don't think is good enough for us to accept. We've seen no figures. What budget is it on?
We'll give you the detail, but it's on budget. It's a spectacular result given the circumstances that we're currently in.
I can't hear what you're saying, but I
We'll
cannot
confirm those
accept.
numbers to you, Councillor. It's all good news on Ashfield Pool.
Well, I would like to move an amendment that we have a briefing soon as we physically meet again to go through all the issues of the swimming pool. Because I note last week in the Herald, there was an advertisement asking for tenders for the gym equipment. I want to know if the gym equipment that we're going to purchase is in the initial budget, or is this going to be extra? Because we wouldn't have really known at the time how much the gym equipment was going to cost. We weren't told that we're going out to tender for gym equipment. There's a lot of things that we haven't been told.
Well, Councillor, you voted for it, so we'll give you more detail.
I beg your pardon?
We'll give you more detail. That's all part of the process.
I don't think I'm bringing up things that shouldn't be brought up. It would have been nice to know.
Point of order, Chair. I just think this was a bit argumentative. I'd rather the questions just be through you and answered.
Yeah, okay. Julie, if you got a question, put it through me and I'll put it to Michael.
Okay, well, the question is the tender about the gym equipment. We weren't told about that. Okay, I don't suppose we're going to be told every tender that goes out, but I would like to know, are we going to be told about the costs?
I might answer that, Councillor Passis. The budget was set and there would have been an allocation for gym equipment. It isn't a new addition to the budget. It would always budgeted and there was an allocation. Going out to tender is a normal purchasing process, so we get the best outcome.
Excuse me, that's operational, and I don't think a councillor, I think the general manager should be answering these questions, not you. I have not brought this up out of the air. There's a report tonight which I'll be voting against because I don't think the report goes far enough. Thank you.
Okay.
I support the acting chair, and Councillor, we acknowledge that you've never supported this project.
Can I speak to this, Chair?
Councillor Cat, yes, please.
Look, I'm very happy to see this report. It's very good to know that the pool is on budget and on time. Yeah, it's
How do
fantastic
you know it's
news.
on time and on budget?
That's what the report says.
Yep, that's right.
And I mean, I should raise a point of order, but let that one slide.
Yeah.
Look, it's really good news. I feared that given all the circumstances, we'd see the project run behind. I think we do need to keep in mind that probably, I think when this was initially reported to us, the budgeting included projected revenue and how that would interact with the loan repayments. I think we probably should build in an expectation now that the revenue from the pool, at least in this this coming financial year, won't be what we expected. And I hope that we can receive information on that as it comes to hand. I won't be voting for the amendment proposed by Councillor Passis. I think when the executive want to brief us on this, I don't see a particular need for it right now, given that the project is going according to plan.
Okay.
Sorry, councillors. We're aiming to open the pool on time.
I cannot hear what the general manager is saying.
We are hoping to open the pool on time.
I can't hear.
Revenue forecast to remain, perhaps turn your mic off. The revenue forecast are still based on opening in September, October. So we think we'll be okay with our loan repayments.
Okay, that's good news.
Well, I'm glad you got good news, Mr. Chair, because I couldn't
Point
hear
of order, can we go on mute when we're in between speaking, because these interjections actually make it really hard to follow the
They're not
meeting.
interjections, I cannot hear.
Because you got to turn your mic, everyone's got to turn their microphones off when they're not speaking. That way you'll hear it a lot clearer. Councillor De Cruz, I saw your hand up. What, did you want to speak?
I was just puzzled. I'm not sure about the labelling of the pools. So which pool does the floating floor go into?
the multifunction pool.
So that's not listed there.
It's a program pool.
Oh, the program pool. Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, Councillor Stamoulis.
Thank you, Councillor Macri. I think as councillors would expect, I'd be one to support any briefings on major projects such as this. So I'll certainly be supporting the amendment of Councillor Passis. I do think that it's important to have a discipline on council where we do get briefings. They don't have to be monthly briefings. We've asked for a monthly report, and that's great. But I think we do need to set up that discipline when we're doing our biggest projects, that we do have some sort of feedback, whether that be a quarterly basis. I think on a project like this, we probably expect that to be quarterly. But we are coming to the last months of this project, and I think it would be very useful to inform councillors of what's going on, to inform councillors about the delivery and any other issues that might be pertinent to this. So I'll be supporting that amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers that want to speak on this item? I'm just trying to scroll through. I can't see anyone. I'll just chime in and say, look, this will be an amazing project when it's actually finished. The amount of water it's going to deliver to the community to enjoy themselves, and the far-reaching amenity it's going to bring to every type of age group. It's really going to be enhance what the council can offer the people of the Inner West, and that's my view on it. I'm very excited about the opening. Councillor Drew, do you want to close?
Yeah, look, I think what we have is drawing to a close of a dream and a vision that many of us had in the old Ashfield. As we noted, the tiles falling off the old pool, to actually get a superb facility in our community for aquatics and for recreation and gym, etc., etc. So it is very pleasing to note that it is going to come in on the budget and on the time. And I do note that we were provided in the financial briefing, in the draft movement analysis, a figure in relation to the opening of the aquatic centre, and a revised figure in terms of what income would be coming in from that. And that was $876,000. So I'd urge everyone to support this. I shan't be accepting the amendment, and I look forward to its opening.
Okay, all right. So we've got the Councillor Passis amendment for a report. I'm not going to block anyone's request for more information. As a councillor, I'm happy to second that, and I'll put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour of receiving a briefing, put your hand up. Councillor Passis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Steer, Councillor Rossetti, and Councillor Porteous. Councillor Skend, I don't know. Is that your hand up or down? No, he's no. Okay. All right. Can we have a count on that? How many do we have?
Councillor Macri, were you in favour of the motion?
Yes, I was in favour.
In that case, there was 8 votes in favour of the amendment.
Okay, then it's carried. That's fine. Okay, and that becomes part of the motion. All those in favour of the motion now say aye or lift your hand again. I've got Councillor Porteous, Councillor York, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Rossetti, Councillor Skander, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Steer, and myself, Councillor Jury, Councillor Passis and Councillor Kiat. So that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to the next item, which is item 2, which is a notice of motion, and it's Councillor De Cruz. Would you like to lead us into that? Councillor De Cruz?
Yep. Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move a motion. This is kind of inspired by the current need to exercise and the lack of open space. So we've actually seen the community at home in the Inner West and exercising on our streets. I must say that it's sometimes very worrying as people run across the roads. They balance on very small traffic refuges on busy roads. The road, actually, the issue here is that it's not so much busy roads, but the roads are quite quiet, which is resulting in people driving much faster. So the community is really at risk at lots of places. So, and I've just observed people trying to cross at different places. So that's why I've brought this motion up. We've got pedestrian access plans on the council website. Some are quite dated. I note the advice, and I thank Councillor Drury for bringing it to my attention and discussing it further, that the council officers are actually preparing an active transport plan, and certainly that's where all of these activities should be incorporated into. And therefore I've slightly modified or amended point 1 to bring back a report on the active transport plan incorporating all of the things previously on that list. But basically as the PAMs will be incorporated into the pedestrian access, into the active transport plan, then that's where they belong in the future, and the report will help councillors see what needs to be done, what the costs are, etc., and we can plan for that. And I've actually written, because the Department of Transport has funding for active transport, and council receives grants for these kinds of activities as well. So I think that that's worthwhile, and I might just flag that I spoke to Councillor Lockie, who has an amendment to add to this motion later on. And then further on to that, there's certain points of other locations, and just a general to write to the Department of Transport, who does have a zero towards zero campaign, and they do run safety campaigns from time to time, and just to encourage them to run a bit more of a safety campaign targeting issues with pedestrians and cyclists and the increased number of pedestrians and cyclists on our roads these days. And I guess the issue with the 10-kilometre zone, there's quite a few of those. Councillor Macri would recall just last week we looked at another one outside the Marrickville Metro site. There's ones in Callan Park, and I think it's really important that the community understands how to use these 10-kilometre zones.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cruz. That's your 3 minutes. Do you want to have an extension, fine, or you can?
But I think I've circulated this motion.
Okay. All right. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Yes, Councillor Steer will second that motion.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else that needs to speak on this motion?
Yes. Oh,
I've got Councillor Lockie and then Councillor McKenna.
Councillor McKenna wants to ask a question first. That's
yes.
Fine.
Okay.
Yes, there's in 2 occasions in this agenda, there's a recommendation for an upgrade of a traffic
refuge.
Refuge. What is an upgrade of a traffic refuge? They're fairly simple. Structures. So I'm not quite sure what an upgrade means.
Possibly an upgrade would mean enlarging of the refuge to make it more of a separation between the traffic in the middle of the road, which is not always possible due to lane width. But Councillor De Cruz, did you want to answer it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, but the issue is also that some are quite old, and they are actually quite dangerous. So there's no guards on them. there's no traffic calming. So that, yeah, those are the kinds of things to bring existing refuges up to current standards.
Okay.
Is the intention of that? Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Lockie.
Yep, as flagged by Councillor De Cruz, I'd just like to move an extra point as an amendment that, sorry, I didn't get a chance to send this out, but it's staff to report back to the next council meeting on any opportunities for grant funding to be sought under the new $15 million Streets and Shared Spaces program announced by the Minister for Planning and Public Spaces last week. I'm proposing this as an amendment. For those of you who are aware of it, last week Rob Stokes announced that there was this new $15 million fund, which was primarily about improving public spaces to make them safer and more usable for pedestrians and for cyclists. So I think that's in keeping with the spirit of this motion. I know that council staff have already started turning their minds to the kinds of projects that could be funded through this program. And the reason, even though the timings are quite tight for them to come back with an update on this for the next council meeting, the reason I've pushed for that timing is because the grants applications actually close on the 10th of June. And I wanted us to have an opportunity to have a look at the list of what's being considered, be able to discuss it, be able to add to it if we knew of specific projects in our area that would also potentially qualify for that funding, rather than just giving it a day before the applications close.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lockie. Any further? Councillor McKenna, I can see your hand waving around.
Look, I understand the intent of this motion, but at the end of the day, we've got PAMPs that need to be consolidated into one inner west PAMP, no doubt, but they're designed to do a whole lot of work over many, many years, and with a hierarchy of need and all of the considerations that go with that. I don't know that we gain a lot by picking off a few places that one councillor thinks is a good idea, rather than leaving it to the experts to actually bring something together as a plan, and then we can comment on what we think at that time. I do have an issue. I know that there are sometimes there are what residents complain of, or their safety issues, but many of the, you know, there is, it's just like picking off things that for whatever reason you're suggesting it, and I really do think we should be leaving it to the consolidated, the consolidation of these PAMPs and the many hours and years of work that's been done with the bicycle groups and all of the other participants and of the various resident groups, and we should be looking at it in a more context where we're looking at the overall issues across the council area, rather than just picking off a few things.
Councillor Passis, I see you got your hand up. Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Did you finish, or?
Yes, I finished. Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Passis, please. Hey, we can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Yep, you press the button. Councillor Passis.
Unmuted?
Yeah, you're unmuted. We can hear you now.
Any councillor that brings forward any initiative or any raises a question of pedestrian safety and cyclist safety is a good thing, and it's sort of not an ad hoc. I recall putting a motion up on pedestrian safety, I think last year. I don't recall ever getting back a report on that, or what was implemented, or what our council has done about that. What has changed? I recall I raised the issue of the people of our ethnic backgrounds, and people that using mobile phones, that they should watch what they're doing. And one of the issues that Councillor De Cruz raised, I spoke to her today, was up in Queen Street and Holden Street. That was an issue on the old Ashfield Council that nothing was done about.
Oh, it's in the PAMP.
Yes, it's in the PAMP and it's staying in the PAMP. Nothing's happening with this PAMP. This is what I'm saying. The PAMP ought to be pumped up because we are raising the same issues over and over again that should be done, and then we move on to other issues as they arise. As the population grows, as more people decide, we know that walking is one of the major exercise pastimes that people use. We've got more cyclists. We have to up the PAMP because I can bring up at least half a dozen initiatives that have not been implemented. And as I said, that pedestrian safety motion I put up was supported by everyone. The figures showed that we have a very high rate of death and injuries, one of the highest, and we've got nothing back. We have not been told what we implemented and what we've done. I thank Councillor De Cruz for bringing this up, and more councillors should come on board for these things, and we should get serious. It's all right, a motion coming up every now and then, but nothing is followed up. And this is people's lives.
Thank you, Councillor Passis.
So, Councillor, I'm not sure if you can hear me, Mr. Acting Chair.
Yes.
We have spent a lot of time following up these issues, and we're hoping that Transport for New South Wales will actually adopt the Inner West as a pilot project for the 40km/h zone, and also deal with the pedestrian and bicycling issues that Councillor Passis and Councillor De Cruz have raised. And we have another meeting with them at a senior level next week.
Okay. I'll chime in and just say a couple of words. I think this is one of the, I think Councillor De Cruz, I think this is one of your better motions. I can support it. I think it's good. It to review what we're doing in the PAMP area and get it prioritised. And I think right to the New South Wales Transport requesting they look at all those things there. That's great. I think that's good. Councillor Lockie, I think you've added to the motion, given it strength, because if we can get, because the problem with all these things are we say what we'd like and we wish for, but there's no funding. With the strengthening by the amendment by Councillor Lockie to try and get that funding source might make some of these things happen. We know they're out there. We've got them listed, but the funds available to actually make them happen. So I'd probably urge Councillor De Cruz to accept Councillor Lockie's amendment into a motion, if that's possible.
Yep,
What do you call rates? What do you call rates? I think rates are funding. Stop going straight to Transport New South Wales and the government.
Point of order. It's an interjection.
Yeah. Well, what they are, they're actually the state roads. So that's why they belong to the state, and that's why they need to do that work. Okay. All right. Councillor De Cruz, do you want to close?
No, that's fine, thanks.
Okay. All right. I'll put that to the vote. Yes. All those in favour, I've got Councillor Kiat, Councillor Skander, Councillor Rosidi, Councillor York, Councillor Porteous, and then up the next screen, I've got Councillor Stamolis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Jury, Councillor Steer, myself and Councillor Lockie, Councillor McKenna and Councillor Passis. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the next item, which is item number 3, which is the improved pedestrian safety in Stanmore. Councillor Steer, would you like to take that on?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much, Councillor Macri. Since I've lived here in Stanmore, traffic has increased very dramatically. It used to be that there was no traffic at all, but that has changed tremendously, particularly in the last few years since we've had so much construction work, both at state and private level. So many things being, and it's just increased. Stanmore Road leads directly to Canterbury Road, so it is a thoroughfare for traffic. And that's why RMS doesn't want to slow the traffic down on Stanmore Road. However, it is extremely dangerous For pedestrians, we have a number of schools which I've listed in the area. One of them, two of them at least, are directly on Stanmore Road, and that is Newington College and the Greek Orthodox Childcare Centre. But there are several other schools just behind, such as Stanmore Public School and Cavendish Street Childcare Centre, and parents and children walk along this area to cross the road. These days, there's quite a long distance between the pedestrian crossing at Holt Street and the refuge at Maundrell Street, and it's virtually impossible to cross the road safely if you don't use either of those spots. And across the road, where I have specifically mentioned the area between Holt Street and Marshall Street, is where there are a number of small specialty shops. They've been there for a long time. People are interested in going to see them. There's no parking outside, so people generally do go there on foot for most of these places because of the limited parking, and they need to be able to cross the road safely to do that. It's good for business to increase the number of refuges, and it's good for pedestrians and cyclists. In relation to the issue of upgrading, as the existing pedestrian refuge, which was put there at the insistence of residents many years ago, hasn't really been upgraded since then, and it should be reviewed and seen if we can make it bigger and expand it to make it safer for pedestrians. If we can't, we can't. But why not get RMS, who are doing plenty of things in this area, to do something constructive to help the residents by upgrading the safety on Stanmore Road. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll need a seconder for that.
I'll second it.
Councillor Lockie, do you want to speak to it?
Just to thank Councillor Steer for bringing the motion to Council, and obviously she's noted all of the issues that exist there currently, including the vast increase in construction-related traffic that is in the area. But I should note that even Council's own analysis of the impact of WestConnex once it becomes operational is that Stanmore Road is obviously predicted to be one of the roads that will take a lot of extra traffic compared to even what it is now, and pedestrian safety is definitely going to be paramount in any sort of treatments we seek for the road there.
Okay. Any other speakers on this?
Can I just ask a
Yes.
question of the mover, Chair?
Yes.
Councillor Steer, I just wanted to clarify, it's Councillor York, I just wanted to understand the refuge outside Maundrell Park, from my recollection, was knocked over a few months ago, I guess in a traffic incident. And I was approached by residents at that time to try to seek it being replaced, which it was fairly quickly, to my recollection. So I think it has, I'm not sure whether it was upgraded at that point or simply replaced. So I just wanted to understand from you, Councillor Steer, if you made any representations at that time, or if you know what the current status of it is, or what you're looking to achieve with the upgrade, because it was replaced, you know, within a year. It's been rebuilt.
Councillor Steer, you need to unmute. You're muted.
Got it, sorry. To my knowledge, Councillor York, that was only replaced. It's very common for refuges to be knocked over. And it's not that I'm particularly wedded to refuges as opposed to pedestrian crossings, but they're what we seem to be able to get more of. And they do have their interests. I have been approached by cycling or groups to expand the refuge, that particular refuge, and the one on Crystal Street as well, to accommodate cyclists. As it's an RMS or Transport for New South Wales road, that's really not for council to ascertain. That's for them, that's for the state to ascertain. And that is why I've merely referred to an upgrade of the pedestrian refuge, because that is something that we can explore and leave it up to RMS or Transport for New South Wales to decide how best to do that. It's certainly an issue that cyclists as well are also greatly at risk on Stanmore Road, given the amount of traffic, particularly trucks, and given the speed at which traffic goes along that area. And so that is why I've asked for all of those things. If you don't ask, you don't get. So it's better to ask and be told it's not possible or they don't feel like doing it, because there is also a very high possibility, particularly with council backing, that it will be accepted.
Any further discussion on this? Let me just scroll through. I'll just chime in. I'll say a couple of things. I mean, that's part of my old ward, the old central ward, the old Maryville Council days. And that was one of my projects as well, to actually get a pedestrian crossing there at Modrell Park. The information I always got back was it didn't meet the warrants, the number of pedestrians crossing the road to actually get a pedestrian crossing. Also, we couldn't even put the normal signage on the actual road. We had to put the little skinny signs, and even they were getting knocked down on that road. It is a bit of a safety issue unless you cross at the designated areas. I'm happy to support this, because maybe the pedestrian counts have gone up, and then it'll be up to Transport New South Wales to look at that and actually do something to make the community a little bit safer. So I'm happy to support this as well. Councillor Steer, did you want to close, or do you want me to just put it to the vote?
Just put it to the vote. I think I did sort of close my last comments.
Okay, all right. All those in favour, lift your hands. So I see Councillor Stamolis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor Cruz, Councillor Jury, Councillor Kiat, Councillor Asidi, Councillor Skander, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Porteous. I see, did I miss anyone? I feel like the lady from Romper Room. Yeah. Councillor Lockie, Councillor York, Councillor Passis, and Councillor Steer, of course. Yep, unanimous. That's great. Okay. We move to item number 4, which is motion that a report be brought back in the June 2020 regarding the funds available for the Mayor to donate without Council's consent. Councillor Passis, would you like to speak on your motion? Just unmute yourself, Councillor Passis, please. Yep, you're not unmuted. Try again. No. Try again. Yep, now you're in. That's it.
Okay.
No, you've just gone off.
I've got to hold the bar down all the time, do I?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, every time I take my hand off the bar, I'm muted again.
Okay. All right. We'll keep your hand on the bar so we can hear you.
Well, I just put this motion up to council. I think we have an obligation to know what money is going out, and we're not quite sure the amount of that the Mayor has delegation for. It's never been put to council, and a recent festival money was given, and we need to know. There's no policy on this. What if a half a dozen people ask for that same amount of money that he just recently gave away, donated? It can add up to a lot of money. If 5 or 6 people put to the Mayor in recess that they all wanted $50,000 each, what's the criteria? So I really do think that this has to come back, and we have to know, and I'd like to know what other councillors think about this. What do we do here? How much delegation and to what amount does the Mayor have? It wasn't an urgent issue. It wasn't a life-threatening issue. It wasn't a dangerous issue that money was needed for, and for other things. So to be open, accountable, transparent and fair, I know the Mayor has certain rights and he can make certain decisions, but I think what happened then was wrong, and I don't think it should happen again in the future. We have 15 councillors. We all like to give money away to our pet projects. There has to be a limit. And that is the reason why I've put this motion up. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion? I'll second it just to give you the ability to have the debate. Are there further speakers on this? Councillor Jury?
Thank you, Councillor Macri. I will note very simply that the Local Government Act gives all mayors in New South Wales the ability to make policy decisions under delegation between meetings, and the council's delegation to the mayor requires that the decisions made under delegation when the council is in recess is to be reported to the first available ordinary meeting. At the first available ordinary meeting of this year, there was the minute that was debated in full, and the mayor's actions were endorsed. I see no point to this resolution.
Okay. Are there any further speakers on this? Councillor Stamoulis.
Thank you, Councillor Macri. I'll be supporting this notice of motion. I think any notice of motion that's aimed at giving both councillors and our public solid information about how council handles its duties is vital, is very, very important. In terms of council, it's part of our financial oversight, and certainly our community want to see that being done well, and they want to understand how that's done. I think it's worth clarifying again what the amounts are that the mayor can have this as part of this delegation, how many matters that might involve, what the total amounts might be, and also the types of matters that fall into this general category of delegation to the mayor for allocation of funds. What are those types of matters? And I suppose internally, it would be worth understanding when the mayor makes the decision to delegate funds and when the mayor refuses to delegate funds and how that decision making is done. So I'm very supportive of bringing that sort of information back to council. Not only, as Councillor Drury said, in terms of the regulations and what the Act is specifying, but also how it operates within our council. I think that's the missing element as well. So a few of those questions that'd be worth both councillors and our public knowing. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other speakers on this item?
Yeah. Victor.
Councillor Porteous, yes.
Yes, look, I'm interested to see that this has been brought to council, because essentially the delegation that the mayor has and the general manager has are delegations that are determined by the council. So the council has the option to determine what they feel comfortable delegating to the mayor. And in fact, when we did vote on that delegation to the mayor, which was probably about 18 months ago now, I voted against it. And in fact, all of the Greens voted against that particular delegation because it was seen to be excessive. I believe that Councillor Passis actually voted for the delegation that is currently permits the mayor to do this. Having said that, I mean, I strongly support the Yabun Festival, and I'm very happy with the fact that we did provide that donation to the Yabun Festival. However, I think there is an issue that needs to be addressed, is that it's one thing to vote for something possibly for political reasons. Well, I don't know, to be honest, when we came to the delegations earlier in the term of council, but it's something else to actually see how those delegations play out. And I think what has happened here is that we've seen how that delegation played out, and some councillors are not happy with the way that that plays out. So I think it's a good idea to flesh that out a bit more and have a look and see well, this is what you voted for. This is how it actually works in practice. And to ask the question, are you happy with this level of delegation to go to the mayor, or do you want to change it? Because at the end of the day, the council also has the power to change that level of delegation if we feel that it's excessive, or if we want to have more control. I certainly, when I was mayor, while I had delegation, I did consult extensively with councillors if there was a decision that needed to be made without being able to come to a council meeting. I've not been very happy with the very limited consultation that has happened on 2 or 3 occasions when quite substantial funds of money have been involved. I do think that it needs to be a genuine consultation, and there needs to be a response from councillors, which didn't really happen in recent situations. I understand that the causes were good, and when they were brought to council, we did support them. But I do think that process can be significantly improved, and possibly a report back to council will give us the opportunity to have another look at this and see how we can improve those processes for great accountability, but also for better democracy, because we don't want to be concentrating too much power in the hands of 1 or 2 individuals in council. This is an elected council. 15 people were elected by the community, and nobody elected the mayor. That was determined internally by councillors. So we all should be representing our communities, and we all should be making those sort of decisions. Okay. So I'll support the passes motion.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Hesse, you wanted to speak.
Thanks, Councillor Macri. Yeah, look, I speak in support of the motion as well. And I think, I'm not sure if there's not some cross purposes here. That, as I understand it, we, as a council, even though I opposed it, gave the mayor essentially a budget to spend if he saw fit, or if the holder of that office saw fit. And then there is the issue, which, as I understand, which is what Councillor Passes has brought to us, which is the general process of what happens between meetings. Now, I recall, and I know that Councillor Macri and Councillor Scanner will recall the terrible Boxing Day tsunami back in 2005, I think it was, when Councillor Hannah was the mayor of Marrickville, and Councillor Hannah certainly rang me, and I'm sure rang all the other councillors of their then Marrickville Council, and sought, I guess, agreement that on behalf of council he would donate, I can't remember what it was, $10,000, what it was to the
10,000.
Yeah, thanks, Vic. And I think that was an unforeseen moment, the issue that the then mayor was dealing with. I think, even though I strongly support the money that's gone to support Yarburn, and I think most residents would, and I don't think we're really here seeking to recommit that issue at all. I think what we're talking about is the principle, and I think supporting the principle here to guide all councillors, including not just the current mayor, of course, but any future mayor, in what the council expects is the reasonable operation of that delegation. I think would be a useful thing for all of us, because I think, $20,000 is a lot of money, regardless, and I think it could be argued that it should reasonably have been put to council before, and we've agreed with that subsequently. That's okay. We're not going to rehash that matter, but it's the principle that I'm supporting here, and that's how I'll be voting. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? I might just say a couple of things. I think if councillors want more information to review the policy and bring it back to council, I'll support that, just to have a look how it's implemented. In all fairness, the mayor did contact all councillors. He sent an email to us all regarding that, and he had no feedback on that. So I presume he looked at that as consensus, and I think that's a reasonable position to have. So I don't want to disparage the mayor on one decision, but as I said before, I'm not going to block councillors wanting actual access to information and looking and reviewing things, how they work. So I'm happy to support that. If there's no other speakers, I'm happy to go to Councillor Passes for closing. Any more speakers? No? Okay, all right. Well then, Councillor Passes, you need to press the button again.
Yes, well, the motion speaks for itself. We all have a right to know what's going on. And I don't think too many councillors would vote against an urgent matter, or if something happened, if we had some sort of problem here in the municipality. I put faith in him. I voted for him for mayor. But the thing is, I'm afraid to say the way the council's going now, it's like there's only 2 or 3 people running the council. We are not told what's going on in a lot of areas, and I think every councillor knows what I'm talking about. We have a right to know, and we have a right to know, as I said, the amount, and the residents have a right to know. We have nearly 200,000 residents. Of course, we're not going to go out to them and ask for their permission when we make decisions, but we have to be open. We have to be accountable, and we have to look after the whole municipality, people from all different backgrounds, all different organisations, not just what a few councillors personally think for whatever reason, politics or not. Open checkbook, I'll sign this, don't forget what a good person I am. Or I've got this through council. It can't be that. We're all to be treated equally. We have people that don't even know what these festivals are. We don't even tell people what we're doing. We don't even advertise at where we've given our money away. If people are not watching live stream, they don't know what's going on. So we need to have a clear policy, just how much power does the mayor have? And I won't take on board when people want to cite the Act. The Act is all over the place. The Act now is in limbo. We don't need the Act to know what's right, what's wrong, and our responsibility to be open and transparent with ratepayers' money.
Okay. Just regarding the decisions under delegation that have been made, in this term, there's only been 2 decisions made under delegation by the mayor. One was the Urban Festival funding, and the other one was the Traffic Committee delegations. So just so people don't think that there's a huge amount of these decisions actually being made without them knowing. I think we're both pretty informed on both of those. Okay, happy to put it to the vote.
Maybe that's what prompted this motion, that it doesn't get out of hand.
Okay. All those in favour, so lift your hands. All right, Councillor Hesse, Councillor Porteous, Councillor Passis, Councillor Stamolis, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Steele, is your hand up? You're a bit of a narrow screen there. Councillor, yes. Councillor Kiat, Councillor Rossetti, Councillor York. So I've got Councillor Iskander is a no or a yes? I can only see your beautiful face, Sam. You've got to hold the camera further away. Okay, and I presume the rest are against. So I presume that's carried.
Yes, that's carried.
Yep, thank you. Now, item 6, the questions are still out there, are being answered. So we'll move forward to item 7, which is the tender.
The chair, we missed item 5.
Did we?
It's actually a notice of motion on questions on notice from Councillor Passis.
Oops, sorry. Councillor Passis, please, would you like to speak again?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Well, as the motion says, councillors have to make decisions. And I do not believe that decisions can be made when we're debating an issue and we ask for information or clarification or details on certain things, and it's not forthcoming. There are at least half a dozen questions that I have put to officers or the general manager, and I've been told I'll take them on notice and get back to you. I'm still waiting months and months. It's not recorded in the minutes what questions were asked. I don't see anybody pick up a pen and write down the questions that are asked. So where is the record? So I'm not accusing anybody of not wanting to get back, but I believe they could easily be forgotten, those questions. And it's just not good governance when you're there, and that's the reason why staff attend council meetings, so they can answer questions to councillors. No councillor knows it all. They cannot profess to know it all on every issue. And those questions are important. And what we've been doing in the past is we've been making decisions and voting on things and we're not fully informed. When we have concerns or we need to know something, I'll take that on board. And as I said to the former general manager, which was the usual practice, I will take it on board. Well, that much was taken on board, the ship would have sunk. Because we never got a thing back. Everything was taken on board. Or I'll take that under advisement. We never, ever received answers. And I had complaints against me for haranguing the staff, for demanding the answers. We have an obligation to make sure our decisions, our policies and what we do on council, that we are fully informed. And sadly, we have not been.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Stamoulis, I see you moving forward. Is that you?
Look, I'm happy to second that motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move a foreshadowed motion.
Okay, well, do you want to speak to it, Councillor Stamoulis?
If I could, thank you.
Yes, you can.
Look, I think there's a couple of issues here. I certainly support the fact that we do need answers to our questions at meetings. I think that's vital. And of course, no one can be a font of all knowledge. So it's difficult when councillors have a lot of questions for all of them to be answered. But one thing I've noticed is there's been an increasing number of questions being taken on notice. And of course, Councillor Passis has requested that those questions be noted and answered. Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to support that. But the question is, I ask myself, why? Why are there increasing numbers of questions on notice? And why are we not getting those answers during the council meeting so that we can make strong decisions for our community? And to me, I think that the problem lies with the fact that we have significantly reduced the number of senior management now in attendance at our meetings. So I looked across various other councils. Now, I'm not counting governance staff. I'm counting those senior managers who attend the council meeting. Northern Beaches Council, Emerge Council has 10 senior managers. Ryde Council has 11. City of Sydney has 9. Bayside, Cumberland, Randwick and Blacktown have 7 at their council meetings in attendance. Inner West Council has fallen to an average of 3. It's fallen to an average of 3. So we don't have that level of senior management in attendance as virtually every other council does. I think that's one of the problems that needs to be looked at in resolving the issues around this motion. And I would be happy if Councillor, well, in fact, it's Councillor Passis Stamoulis' motion. So I'll be putting this following addition to the motion, Councillor Passis, that council should review, or council to review, the level of senior management attendance at council meetings to enhance the effectiveness of council meetings. I think that's where part of this problem lies. Thank you.
John, just looking at that, I'm not sure. I know it sort of relates to it, but doesn't really bear any. It's not the actions that Councillor Passis, I understand. She wants the questions recorded on the minutes so they can be answered in the forthcoming agendas, at least. I don't know if your amendment really fits in with that. It's a different action. It's a different action. She's asking for something different than what you're saying. Well, you're saying you want the staff there, but even sometimes when the staff are there, they are unable to answer the questions.
well, not
Mr. Chair, may I say something?
Yes.
I do believe it has something to do with it because my concern is all the questions that are taken on notice. We've just been given an explanation. If the senior staff were in attendance, maybe so many questions wouldn't be taken on notice. I do believe it has something to do with it. I'll accept that amendment.
Okay. All right. No problem. So that the amendment becomes part of the motion. Okay. Further speakers on that?
Victor?
Yeah. Rochelle? Yeah.
Yeah, look, I thank Councillor Passes for bringing forward this issue because I think it is a frustration that we are finding that there are questions that are being taken on notice by staff and we're not getting the answers coming back to us. And to be honest, I do think there needs to be a better process for that. Having said that, I think it's difficult to accommodate within the Code of Meeting Practice. In terms of the Code of Meeting Practice, there is a specific requirement in the Code of Meeting Practice that the questions that are raised at the meeting or that are put on notice should be taken on notice and the response brought back to the next meeting of council. And look, what I'd like to move is a foreshadowed motion, which I think perhaps might resolve the issue a bit more efficiently without having to revert to changing the Code of Meeting Practice. So I've sent this through to all councillors and to the minute taker. If you could perhaps just bring that up, and I'll call that a foreshadowed motion. Basically, that council notes that the Inner West Council Code of Meeting Practice states that a councillor or council employee to whom a question is put is entitled to be given reasonable notice of the question, in particular sufficient notice to be able to reference be made to other persons or documents. Where that councillor or employee is unable to respond to the question, they may take it on notice and report the response to the next meeting of council. I think there's two issues here. One is the questions on notice which are being tabled by councillors, and councillors will note that I have had questions on notice being tabled since March, which are still not answered, and in fact were originally going to be answered in June and have now been pushed out to be answered in August. That's just not acceptable, and it's not within neither the spirit nor the requirements of the Code of Meeting Practice. It's completely outside any reasonable timeline for responding to questions on notice. So I have moved that council further notes with concern the questions from councillors which have been submitted as questions on notice are not being answered at the next council meeting nor within any reasonable time frame. Council therefore directs the General Manager of the Inner West Council to respond to questions on notice submitted by councillors by the next council meeting. And the other point I'd like to propose is in terms of addressing this issue of the questions that are actually raised in the council meeting. In regard to questions that staff are unable to answer during a council meeting and therefore ask that they be taken on notice, that a record of these questions should be kept by the General Manager and the responses reported in a briefing paper before the next council meeting, with the briefing paper then to be published on the council website alongside other councillor briefing papers. The reason I'm saying that is because I think there does need to be, the public needs to be able to see what the responses are. That can be done by publishing the briefing paper. In fact, we had an agreement from the General Manager a few months ago that all of our briefing papers would be published up on the website. So I assume that is
Sorry, Rochelle, I'm just going to move an extension of time for you of 1 minute.
Oh, thanks for that.
Seconded by Councillor Hesse. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Declare that unanimous.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look, I think that what I'm proposing is perhaps a better way forward than the Councillor Passes. I'm happy for Councillor Passes' second my foreshadowed motion, but I think that it's better if we approach it in this way because, as I said, to try and incorporate it into the Code of Meeting Practice is going to require us to put that out on exhibition for 28 days, etc. And it's a rather long process to deal with it in that way. Whereas I think by keeping a record and bring it to a briefing paper, then putting it up on the council website, we're still addressing the problem. And I do want addressed as well this issue about the questions on notice that are being tabled by councillors for the business papers not being answered in at all an adequate period of time, because we can't function properly as a council if we're not getting answers to questions that we're reasonably asking of council staff. it's making us more dysfunctional as a council for that to be continued. And I really think that as a council body, we need to address that. So I hope that councillors will support that foreshadowed motion that I'm proposing. And yeah, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other councillors who want to speak on this matter?
Can I say something quickly?
Yes, Councillor McKenna. Yes, please do.
In relation to Councillor Passis's motion, I don't know that I'm seeing something different, and I'm talking about the questions that are taken on notice at meetings. Almost invariably, especially since we've been in this Zoom meeting phase, those responses seem to be coming very quickly after the meetings, sometimes almost before the end of the meeting or very soon after the meeting. So sometimes I don't know whether some people will actually see or what happens. The long council questions on notice that Councillor Porteous is talking about is a completely different issue, and I think that's addressed in the Code of Meeting Practice, isn't it? Isn't that where that, you know, I just feel that where this
it's not happening with Bill.
Well, that's the issue. It's not, I mean, we don't need to have more and more motions just saying the same, something that's already there. It's almost, I feel like this is just an attack on the staff, and I feel tonight, I feel very uncomfortable. I don't really want to vote on some of these things because it's not the way I would operate. I think we should be able to get these things happening, and it makes me feel very uncomfortable. So, and so I'm not supporting Councillor Passis's motion anyway. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just try and might say a few things. I think it comes down to allocation of resources, and part of the issue is, I mean, we saw under the previous GM, we used to have a cast of thousands. There were more staff at the council meetings than actual councillors some nights, and you know, most of them would sit in the dinner room and just sit there all night, and they might come out, and if their item is listed and it didn't get heard, then they go home at 11 o'clock, and it was a waste of time and a waste of resources. I think it's reasonable for people to actually, if they've got a question, unless it's popped into them in their head on the night, that they should give staff an email and ask a question and give them reasonable time to give you the answer. I don't mind that councillor, the minutes show the actual questions on notice. I'm happy with that, but I don't want 20 people sitting outside in the room, in the dinner room, waiting for someone to come back in. And point 3, Rochelle, is a bit of an issue because there's only 3 days between the council meeting and the agenda being published for the next meeting. So that's going to be a challenge in itself.
Bridget, that doesn't go to the meeting. It's a briefing paper. It doesn't need to get done.
Doesn't need to go to the briefing? Okay.
No, it's a briefing paper that goes to councillors.
A separate briefing paper.
Yeah, but it doesn't go in the council papers. It's not a.
Yeah. I'd really like to see councillors actually email staff directly and get their answers before the meeting, rather than just drop it on the staff at the meeting, have the discussions before, or send an email. If you can't, I've had my issues where I can't get a hold of staff because they're busy with what's going on. I do drop the email to them and they get back to me in a reasonable time. And if they can't, they explain why. So I haven't had that issue. So I'm struggling now to actually support this. I was initially going to support the motion that the questions on notice are recorded, but now it's just morphed into something that's just, it's gone everywhere. So I'll struggle to support that. All right, Councillor, any other councillors need to speak on this? Then Councillor Passis, you've got your right to close. Press
I
the,
saw some hands up.
oh, did you? Sorry. Who put their hands up?
Councillor York and Councillor De Cruz.
Okay, Councillor York first.
I just wanted to make the observation that I think our council meetings have been difficult for many reasons over a long period of time. But I think it's probably fair to observe that the last, I don't know, 6 or 12 months have been a marked improvement than the first 6 or 12 months. And I have to say I'm with Councillor McKenna that it's hard not to read this as an attack on the staff who can't be held responsible for the behaviour of councillors, I think, in council meetings. And I agree with Councillor Macri's plea that, and I know many councillors do this, but certainly not all, to try to engage respectfully and you know, clearly with the staff before the council meeting, so that it's not a list of items that have just been thought of on the spot, you know. And I agree with Councillor McKenna's observation that in recent weeks we've been getting very quick responses to questions that have been raised in meetings, either by email or sometimes in the time of the meeting itself. So I understand the frustrations about written questions on notice. I think, I hope there's a way that can be resolved between the councillor or the councillors that specifically relates to. But I don't think a motion like this that is directive and of the tone that we've got in front of us is something that I can support.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor De Cruz.
Yes, I'd like to speak in support of the of Councillor Porteous's motion. I think the issue here is asking questions for transparency, so that we can inform the community of the background information. I mean, it is really concerning that Councillor Porteous has put up a series of questions on notice. They're not off the cuff. There are questions that do come up in a council meeting, and the staff have indicated they'll be taking it on notice, and they just disappear into the ether. So I think it is really important that we do record these questions and that we do get answers to these questions. I think I thank Councillor Passes for bringing her motion, but I think what Councillor Porteous has put up is more the procedural stuff in responding to what Councillor Passes is trying to achieve. So I'm speaking in support of the foreshadowed motion.
Okay. Is anyone else that wants to speak on this matter?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes, Councillor Lockie, yes.
It's just in relation to the foreshadowed motion, point 3. I don't have an issue with the crux of it, in that the questions on notice are recorded and put on in a briefing paper, and that paper even put on the council website. But I don't, maybe this is my failing memory, but I don't recall that other councillor briefing papers were going to go on the website. I'm not sure who that's a question for, but was that actually agreed, and is that supposed to be happening?
Well, it's a question to the mover of the amendment. So Councillor Porteous, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, look, that's my recollection, and I did run that past the mayor as well, and that was his recollection as well, that the general manager had committed probably a couple of months ago to putting all of the councillor briefings up on the website for transparency. Having said that, I haven't actually gone to look for them, but there was a commitment that was made by the general manager, which both the mayor and myself recalled, to do that. So, I mean, I guess we can check with the general manager if you want to ask the general manager. That's definitely our recollection.
Yeah, sure.
Are you putting that question through to the CEO?
Yeah, why not?
Hello, Michael. Did you hear the question?
Yeah, thanks, councillors. We're committed to transparency, and I'm not sure what's up on the website at the moment, but I think we agreed that matters that had gone past perhaps 3 months would be up on the website. If there's anything sensitive, we'd come back to council and just check with them. But yes, as a matter of principle, we think those briefing notes should go up and be made publicly available.
Okay, your recollection and your memory is better than mine, Councillor Porteous.
Okay, are there any other speakers on this item? If there's no other speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Passis for her close. Councillor Passis?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you now. Now I can't hear.
2 observations. This is not an attack on the staff, as one councillor has tried to point out. So whatever we raise is an attack on the staff, is it? We are elected to ask questions.
Keep your hand on the button, Councillor.
That need addressing. And I will answer Councillor York. Not every councillor is getting the same information. And there are plenty of things that I can bring up about that. So please do not try to discredit the motion because of the games that you like playing. All I'm asking is, why isn't the questions recorded in the minutes so we can follow up on the answers we're supposed to get? I will accept Councillor Stamoulis's amendments, and the motion is staying as it is. It is not a problem motion. If any councillor can honestly say what I have put forward is not in the best interest of councillors, the municipality and residents, feel free to vote against it. I'm doing what I believe is right, and I'm doing bringing up issues that have been happening for a long time. I do not believe I have to wait for an answer on the name of a staff member. I raised this. It was taken on notice. We have a staff member that the general manager did not know his name, and I'm still waiting for his name. Well, I don't think that is 6 weeks or 3 months to give that answer. Now, let's be sensible. Forget your political games. We are trying to run a council with over a $200 million budget, 200,000 people, people's lives. Let's be open, transparent, and stop these games. Not every councillor is treated the same. If they were, these motions would not be going up. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put the amendments of, well, it's a foreshadowed motion. So if the motion doesn't get up, then it goes over to the foreshadowed motion. That's the process. So the motion moved by Councillor Stamoulis and Passis is up first. All lift your hands if you're in favour of that. All right, I'll support that because I thought half it was okay. Myself, Councillor Passis, Councillor Stamoulis, is Councillor De Cruz, are you up or down? You're up. Okay, Councillor Steen, Councillor Jury are not. Councillor Rosidi is up. Councillor Scand, I can still see your face. That's all I can see. Is your hand up or down? Is it down? It's down. Okay. I'll record you as that. I can't hear you. Okay, and Councillor York is down. Okay.
So there was 5 votes for the motion.
Yes. Okay. That's defeated, and now
no, excuse me, Mr. Chairperson, can you go through that count again? You've left a few councillors out. Where's McKenna and Drury?
They're against.
Okay, could you go through the numbers again?
Okay, for the motion, it was Councillors De Cruz, Macri, Passis, Rosidi, and Stamoulis. Did I miss anyone in that? Speak now or forever hold your peace. No. Okay. Against, it was Councillor Jury, Hesse, Askander, Kiat, Lockie, McKenna, Porteous, Steer and York. It was lost. Okay, then the foreshadowed motion comes in, which is moved by Councillor Porteous. I need a seconder for that. Is there a seconder
I'll
for that?
second that. Councillor Steer will
Councillor
second that.
Steer will second that.
Can
Okay.
I speak to it briefly, Councillor Macri?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Councillors, look, I've actually just forwarded you some correspondence that's between myself, the General Manager and the Mayor, which is just correspondence which I have been asking since April for these questions on notice to be answered within a reasonable time frame. I wasn't bringing this to the other councillors. It was an internal conversation I've been having with the General Manager and the Mayor, who is supportive of us trying to get these questions answered. But I think you can see that the General Manager hasn't even acknowledged my requests for the questions on notice to be answered, and he hasn't replied in any way. So I'm in a situation where I have these questions on notice which have been reasonably tabled requests, and they are questions which have largely come from the community and need a reply. And basically I'm being completely stonewalled on this. If it happens to me, it can happen to anybody else. It's just not the way council is done. Those councillors that have been on council before know that questions on notice are supposed to be answered by the next council meeting. And if there's a problem, there needs to be a two-way communication with the councillor concerned about which questions are difficult, and at least the questions that are not difficult should be answered, and the others should be answered as quickly as they possibly can. I'm showing you this to show there's a serious problem here. And the problem is that there's basically nothing is happening in terms of responding to these questions of notice. My requests for them to be answered are being completely ignored by the General Manager. And I don't know what else to do except to ask you to support this motion so that at least it's clear that the council expects these questions of notice to be answered, because I mean, what else can we do to get them answered? Or if you think it's okay not to answer questions of notice and to have a completely dysfunctional council, then don't vote for this motion. But if you want this council to be functional and you think that this is an elected body, and if we've properly notified that we have questions of notice, they should be responded to in a reasonable time frame, then I think you have to, and I would request that you respond to it. I'm sorry if you don't like the tone, but I'm really at the end of my tether in trying to get a response out of the General Manager or out of the staff on this. I don't think it's acceptable to say August for these questions or any questions. And I do think we need to have a better way of dealing with the questions that are asked during the meeting and not responded to. So I hope you'll also support point 3. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Macri.
Yes.
Perhaps if I could just simply indicate that we are keen
Point of order, Councillor Macri.
Yes.
I've just given my right of reply. It's not, the General Manager doesn't have another option to speak. So
no, I'd like some clarification on, I'm asking to give me some clarification on the comments you made. You made some strong comments there. I'd like some clarification. And I think all councillors would like clarification. So please proceed, Michael.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. The questions from the council are entirely reasonable. We are focused in a global pandemic on matters that are necessary and essential. These questions will be responded to as soon as we have resources available. We don't have those resources available at the moment. If council want to insist they get an answer, I will provide an answer, but it will be extremely short. I personally have lots of concerns, as the councillor does, about glyphosate, but it is not up there with the global pandemic issues that my senior executive and all my staff are currently dealing with.
Well, sorry, but if the General Manager has been given an extra right of reply, I'll take an extra right of reply.
I'm happy to hear from you, Rochelle. I'm happy to hear from you.
The point is that the General Manager has not even responded to my emails. just asking what is happening in terms of not responding to these questions of notice. It's really unacceptable and extremely disrespectful to any councillor to not even say why you're not answering questions. And I do think that it's reasonable to expect that at least some of those questions get answered, some kind of timeline, which is not just they will be answered in August. If that is really creates a very dysfunctional council. And don't forget that the initial response was before the COVID situation as well, because originally though, those questions were tabled in the first meeting of March when we didn't have a coronavirus situation. And immediately I was told on the 10th of March when they were first tabled that I wouldn't get an answer until June. That was before coronavirus.
A few of mine were before Corona too.
Okay. All right. Well, everyone's had a good airing of this. Now, can we put it to the vote, the foreshadowed motion? All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Councillor Kiat. Okay, that's all I've got there. Let me just keep your hands up, please. Councillor here, Councillor Stamolis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Steer, Councillor Porteous, Councillor Passis, Councillor Lockie. So how many is that?
I have 7 votes, Chair.
Oh, God. Okay. All right.
I've got 8 actually.
8 votes.
8. So we got. I'll repeat the names that have voted in support: Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Hesse, Councillor Kiat, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Passis, Councillor Porteous, Councillor Stamolis, and Councillor Steer. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is 8. Yes, that's carried.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Now, we'll go to item 7.
Chair, this is just a confidential matter. We just need to have a short adjournment so we can let the public know that the live stream is about to be shut off.
Point of order. Point of order. We've got some motions that we need to deal with before we go to the committee of the whole. That's what we've done previously, is we've done the urgent motions first so that the public can observe.
Yeah, what about item 6?
And item 6 is a committee of the whole.
Oh.
It's a confidential item.
Yeah, I've got
a... Chair, may I move suspension of standing orders such as to deal with the number of urgency items prior to going into committee of a whole?
Yes, I'll accept that. Moved by you, I'll second it. All those in favour?
Yeah.
Aye.
Declare that unanimous. Is that anyone not supporting that? No? Okay. We'll deal with those. Okay, which was the first one you want to bring forward?
I'm happy to crack on with the one I had there, Councillor Macri.
Which was the...
So I'm seeking urgency regarding a matter that the federal government has allowed changes to the operation of the curfew at Sydney Airport, the airplanes that are coming in during the curfew. And this is an urgent matter because I don't believe that council's been consulted, and I hope that we would want to speak on behalf of our residents and let the federal government know the views of council as representatives of the community of the Inner West. And it's urgent because it's happening now.
I think that's urgent. It's happening now and people are losing their sleep. Okay, I'm happy with that, to deal with that.
We need we need to vote on the urgency before anyone else can.
Yes, that's right.
Can I ask a question through you, Chair, to the officer? Is that because the mayor is not in the chair, it's an acting chair?
No, you always got to vote on the actual urgency.
Oh.
I rule it's urgent, and now we vote on it. So,
sorry. Yep.
Okay, so that's the process.
We need a
second. I'll second it.
Thanks, Vic.
Okay. everyone, is there anyone dissenting from that? Yeah, you will speak. I just need to get the vote. Is everyone happy to speak on this matter? Is it unanimous? Speak now, forever hold your peace. That's done. It's unanimous. Thank you. Now, Councillor Hesse, you want to open it up?
Yes, if I can.
Yes.
So thanks, Councillor. I do apologise that this is a late motion. I was only contacted by a resident of St Peters on this matter on Sunday evening. Obviously missed the deadline, so I do apologise for that. I did send that out this afternoon, including a letter from Air Services Australia to some residents, which advised of changes. And so Air Services Australia provided correspondence to residents that indicates that the Australian government has changed operational procedures at Sydney Airport to allow the operation of certain additional freight aircraft. The correspondence indicates that residents under the flight path may experience, and I quote, noticeable difference during the curfew hours. Frankly, that can only mean more noise. Residents living around Sydney Airport have long suffered abuse of the curfew, and I don't think there's any reason to expect that abuse should worsen during this time. Changes have been required by many sectors as a result of the shutdown caused by COVID-19. However, a further weakening of the curfew is most certainly not in the best interest of Inner West residents. And frankly, I don't believe that we should let the door open. There are interests who want to weaken the curfew further. I don't believe we can effectively represent the residents of this area, whether they live in St Peters, Sydenham or Tempe, or over at Rozelle or in Newtown or everywhere else in the Inner West. It's very, very clear the curfew is there to allow people to have a good night's sleep. That's what we need, and I don't believe there should be any exceptions to that. And the federal government really must act in the interests of Inner West residents, indeed all Australians, to protect the quality of life we enjoy and the simple enjoyment we need from our homes, including a good night's sleep. So I'm asking that we really write to the federal government, the Minister for Transport, Infrastructure and Regional Development, the Honourable Michael McCormack, informing him of the significant adverse impact from aircraft noise, that we support the curfew remaining in place from 11 till 6, and that we are opposed to the changes, and we demand that basically we keep the curfew hours sacrosanct. So happy to discuss any proposed amendments. Thank you.
I'm happy to second that.
Thanks, Vic.
Okay. Councillor Passis, you wanted to speak? Please press the button, Councillor Passis. We can't hear you.
Yes, I'd like...
No, you keep your finger on the button because we can't hear you.
First of all, was it one resident that contacted Councillor Hesse?
Question to Councillor Hesse.
Yes, through you, Chair. It was one resident. The letter is from Air Services Australia.
Keep your finger on the button, Councillor Passis.
And I'm sorry I said it late, Councillor Passis, but I have sent that to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Well, I've had nobody telephone me about it, and I'm pretty sure the people under the flight path, all their homes were insulated. In this time of crisis, for whatever reason, no, the planes are not working. We've heard of the millions they're losing and the people who are out of work. To put this motion up, I'm afraid to say, is the height of selfishness. One resident has telephoned and they're upset about some aircraft noise. I'm sorry, let's really get real on this issue. There's no flights, there's no aeroplanes. And if there's a few extra bringing in freight, we don't know what's in that freight. Maybe it's things that the hospitals need. I don't know what it is, but the country's been shut down and we have one resident complaining about the curfew. Honestly, Councillor, I really don't know how you really had the height to put this motion up. Everyone has a right to put motions up, but did you think about this? Or is this just an attempt to go after the federal government no matter what?
That's it, Councillor Passis? You done? Okay. All right, I might chime in and just say a couple of things. First of all, I think we need to find out, is this a temporary measure? Because they should have consulted with us and let our residents know, not just actually come over the top and done it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if they are freight planes, the freight planes are all older aircraft and they're a lot noisier than the actual new age airliners. So that's another impost on the residents, particularly out of the curfew hours. The third thing, and probably more importantly, and I really want to bring a notice of motion up on this, and it's easy to say all those houses were insulated. Well, yeah, you know, you're right. They were insulated more than 30 years ago. And I go through a street where I know a few of the residents. None of the air conditioning systems that the government put in are working anymore, but the planes are still flying and they're still charging the departure tax. I think what the government should be doing, and I might move this as a motion, reviewing and looking at the houses, they did the work, and looking at the condition of the equipment, if it's functioning, because none of it's working. A lot of the windows they installed have fallen apart in a lot of the places that I've seen. So I think I might move an amendment that asks the government to review the insulation and see what equipment is working, where it needs to be renewed. Are you happy with that, Councillor Hesse?
Accepted.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, Councillor Stamolis.
Thank you. A question through the chair, if I could, to Councillor Hesse. What reasoning did they give for wanting to fly in between 11 and 6 a.m? What was the reasoning for that? It's surprising to me that they'd want to do this. And also, did they give any indication of what this freight was? Is this urgent freight or what's it all about? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, the letter from Air Services Australia, which I sent to all councillors, indicates that it's about the management of supply chains. Basically, I'll cut to the chase. I believe it's because it suits the airline companies, and that's it. It's clearly, as we all know, air flights during the day are much less, and we're all happy about that. But trying to get a good night's sleep is very, very important, no matter what time of the year it is or what situation is. And I'm pretty keen that we keep that. So it's the letter, as I say, from Air Service Australia indicated it was international supply chain matters. It didn't talk about what was in the aircraft at all.
But Councillor Hesse, if I could, it just surprises me with the daytime availability of the airport. Why would they even need to do this?
That would surprise. That surprises me too.
It's time of departure when they leave from their destination, when they arrive.
One would imagine, given the current state of international air flights, that they could reschedule things. But that's there. I think what we're saying is, what my motion is really saying is, you've got plenty of space to do it during the daytime. Do it during the daytime.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion on this?
Yes. Councillor Macri, I would like to say a few words.
Yes, please.
Yes, I believe this, thank you. I believe this letter was sent to the residents only of St. Peter's. It was certainly not sent to the residents of Stanmore Ward, to my knowledge, because I didn't get one. And I live directly under the flight path. I didn't always live directly under the flight path. It got moved after I moved here. And I know what it's like to live under the flight path. It is dirty because of dumping of fuel. It is noisy because of constant flights. And it's very invasive because the planes fly very low. In fact, I know they use Newington College as a way of visually assessing where they are. And which shows you how low they can fly, that they can actually recognise certain houses. It's also not true that everybody during the last time this became an issue was insulated. What the government did was create a very narrow field for people's houses to be insulated, and boundaries were moved, including the boundaries where I live, so that houses, including mine, were not insulated. So a lot of people still are affected greatly by aircraft noise. I take your point, Councillor Macri, about the air conditioning not being maintained by the government and people's equipment failing. And that is because this has also, the works done by the government, which weren't particularly good in the first place, were indeed done long ago, as you have indicated.
Over 30 years.
Over 30 years ago, and I remember it well. And but that's a long time to expect things to stay in good condition.
And departure tax is still there.
Well, exactly. And where does that money go? Where does that money go?
Yes.
The thing is, as Councillor Macri's pointed out, freight is loud, it's noisy, and it's also not a reason for breaking the curfew. This would be the thin end of the wedge. Let in some freight planes, okay. Then let in the passenger airlines, okay. Pretty soon there'll be air traffic all night long. Nobody will be able to sleep. The last time this happened, people suffered terrible mental and physical effects from the constant planes overhead, which had increased dramatically in a short time. And therefore, we have to resist this. It's a try-on. It's a try-on to see if we'll put up with it.
Okay.
And we don't want to go back to those days of constant planes overhead. We need to be able to sleep.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. Any further discussion? No further discussion. I'll allow Councillor Lessey to close.
I'll waive my right.
Okay, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hands. I see Councillor Jury, Councillor Kiat, Councillor Skander, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Porteous, Councillor York. I see myself. Councillor Passis, are you supporting this or not? No, she's not supporting it. Councillor Stamolis, Councillor Essie, and Councillor De Cruz. So everyone except for Councillor Passis.
I'd like to know what's in the freight before I support this.
Councillor Macri.
Yes.
May I also move an urgency motion, please?
Yes, I'll accept that. And we'll put it to the vote.
What's it on? Sorry, just quickly.
Graham Green.
Yes, of course.
So the urgency arises because the education department have a consultation period in relation to a proposal they have that ended on Friday.
Yes. Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I declare that unanimous. Are there any dissenters? No, that's good. We're moving in the right direction. Okay, Councillor Dew, would you like to open up?
Okay, so I think this is a very simple resolution to write to the Minister of Education seeking assurance that there'll be no change to the existing community access to that Graham Green Park. Further, if they do need to put a demountable, then they not impede access. Council currently pays a licence fee for the community to access that green. What is being proposed has raised considerable concerns of residents around that area that access will be cut off. I understand the school has needs. I don't want to get into that. What I do understand is that our residents also have some needs. They have used that for a considerable period of time, and that we should express a very clear and succinct view on this matter. I urge all councillors to support this and not to overcomplicate it.
I second it.
Second by Councillor Skander. Do you want to say something, Sam?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Look, I strongly support Councillor Dury, simply because we've been through this, if you remember.
Yes, I do. Very well.
And we were able to work with the community and listen to them and address the issue, which at the end resulted by supporting the community keeping access to that particular park. This park is very important, not for the community only to use it, but also for outdoor sport. The students are using it. Some ladies using it. I've seen them, and myself, I was coaching soccer there for a few years when I was young, not now. But I do remember that 30 years ago, the park was for the community. 40 years ago, for the community. 42 years ago, it was for the community. And they tried to change 20 years ago. Then we were able to stand and save it. I urge all the councillors to be with us on this, and let's save it for the community.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Hesse.
Thanks, Chair. And look, I thank Councillor Drury and Councillor Skander for bringing this to us. I was contacted very recently too about.
I would like to speak.
By my old friend
yes.
and local resident adjacent to the area, Michael O'Mara, who I used to play football with at Holston Park. And I've played on the green itself. I think really, if one, and I'm not going to have a go at the local school, but I will have a go at the Department of Education and the government. Not just the current government, but the kind of planning which sees pretty much every public school in the Inner West putting demountable buildings on the very small playing fields they've got. That's a shocking thing. I was just speaking to some friends the other day who are actually going to send their son to high school at a private school or a Catholic school, because the public school in their area is currently has no playing fields. It's a building site, and that's not acceptable. It's not forward planning, and it's not okay. The education and the breadth of education suffers when we lose our open space, the very limited amount of open space we have in the Inner West. And of course, this has a direct impact on the community. The amount of open space around Dulwich Hill shops is very, very small. There are pocket parks and nothing more. And I know that there's an active community petition on this, which has been signed by many, many hundreds of local residents. Regardless of the way they vote, who cares the way they vote? It doesn't matter. This is about good public planning. And clearly this is not good public planning. We, as Councillor Macri and Councillor Skander have alluded, this is a matter that's come to the former Marrickville Council a number of times. And we've been down this path before. And we need to remind the state government that the community in this area has spoken very, very strongly in favour of keeping this as open public space that is used for all members of the community, young and old, men and women, and we should stand by that. So thanks again to Councillor Drury and Iskander. You have my very strong support on this issue, as does our community.
Thank you.
Councillor Passis.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes. Now we can't hear you.
I support this motion, but has the Education Department told us that residents will not have access? Because I'm led to believe it's quite a large open space. Have they told us? I hope that is in what we're going to ask them.
It depends. That they actually have said there's two locations. One is A, which is in the middle of the soccer fields that's there. B is actually up against the boundary, which denies access to actual people walk through there because they can't go all the way around the block to get to Marrickville Road. So they've given a choice of two locations in the actual consulting of this.
Well, I think we should be, he who is without sin cast the first stone. The population's growing. We took away open space with the netball courts. We're doing it with the skate park. It's okay when we do it, when we say we need it, but it's not okay if the government does it. We are a population that is growing. We've fenced off schools because of vandalism and to keep the kids safe. What do you expect the government to do when they need to house these children? We have that going up, and then if we go up and make high-rise like in Greece, doesn't suit the area. It's a heritage area. There's no answer to this.
Councillor Passos, we can't hear you.
I will support this motion just so we can get some information on what's going on. The land belongs to the Department of Education. They've let the residents use it. They need it now. I still believe it's large enough for residents still to have access. But please, don't sit there holier than thou when we are building on our open space. And we expect the government, don't do as I say, not as I do. Just stop and think before you bring these motions up. And again, it's political. That's all it is.
Okay. All right. I'll just chime in.
Councillor Macri?
Yes.
Look, Councillor Macri, if I could speak. Yeah,
yes, you can.
Thank you. I take the point made by Councillor Passos is that council is one of the key builders over our open space. We've had childcare centres built on open space and a variety of other things, and even proposals today that'll require building on over our open space, and that concerns me greatly because we need to preserve our green space. And in light of that, I'd like to propose a foreshadowed motion, which I hope that councillors will also find suitable, and that is taking point 1 of the Drury-Iskander motion, which says, writes to the New South Wales Minister for Education seeking assurance that there will be no change to the existing community access to Graham Green Park in Dulwich Hill, and that all other options are considered before this location is chosen. The community have advised me that there are alternatives, and these need to be explored and these need to be considered before this location is chosen. So that's my foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just chime in and just say a couple of things. First of all, my first initiation of Graham Green is when the then, I think it was the Labor Party that was in power, then the state government, they were going through a program of actually fencing all the schools off and closing it off. And Graham Green was going to be fenced off from the community, which is traditionally was actually always open and shared with the community. But it was security issues with vandalism to schools and all that. And then council entered into an agreement with them to actually maintain the actual field so the community could still have access. So there was a bit of a benefit for the school funding wise. We would look after it, but our community was able to access the very precious open space. I think it was during the period of administration that agreement changed somewhat from an actual agreement to maintain to an actual license. So council actually pays a license for the community to use that actual field. So it's important to the people there. And I think the motion that's above us, which was moved by Councillor during Councillor Iskander, actually deals with, do you really need to put that demountable there? Can you please go back and look at other locations on the site? If so, if there's no other way you can actually put it anywhere else on the site other than that field, then put it in position B, but maintain the access to the field and the access to the road that people use. And that's the common sense approach. The only other motion that I would ask Councillor Dury and Councillor Iskander to accept is a point 3 on their motion is the actual license agreement that council has with the school has actually lapsed, and for us to actually renew that agreement to maintain the actual use of the actual field for the community. So if we can put that in point 3, that council engage immediately with the school to re-establish that license, and it's only just expired just now, believe it or not. Are you happy to accept that, Councillor Dury?
That's underway, Councillor.
Yep, that'd be great. Okay. Any further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put it to the mover for his closing.
What about the amendment?
No, I'm going to put Councillor Jury to, if he wants to close. Do you want to close, Councillor Jury?
I think it's all been said. I look forward to everyone's support for the motion
Okay.
as amended.
All right. The foreshadowed motion will be voted on if the actual primary motion actually fails.
Has Councillor Stamoulis's amendment been accepted?
No.
It's a foreshadow.
No.
It's a foreshadow.
It's a foreshadowed motion.
A foreshadowed
It's contrary. It's contrary. Okay.
You want to second it?
Well, we'll see if it needs to be seconded.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, we'll put the motion up. All those lift your hands if you're in favour. I see Councillor Skander, myself, Councillor Jury, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Steer, Councillor Kiat, and Councillor McKenna, Councillor York, and Councillor Lockie, and Councillor Rossetti, and Councillor Porteous. I think that's been supported in.
Unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous? Okay, that's great. All right, there's no other urgency motions?
There is one, there's a third urgency motion.
Wow, this is a busy
Councillor
night.
De Cruz.
It's a very urgent motion.
We have no record of.
Well, everything's happening.
We have no motion from Councillor De Cruz.
What's?
I sent that through to Catherine, and I've circulated to all councillors. So Ian, I'm not sure why you haven't got it.
It's on the screen now.
I'm aware of it too.
Okay, all right. I'll put it to the councillors if they think it's urgent. What is it relating to, Councillor? Why is it urgent, firstly? Councillor De Cruz.
Okay. The reason. Okay, so thanks, Councillor Macri. The reason it's urgent, so what it relates to is to writing to the Prime Minister to get to ask to request the extension of support for people who've lost their jobs, and to also for support for asylum seekers and refugees who are affected by COVID-19. The reason it's urgent, and I didn't put it up as a motion before, is that this has only come through in the last few days from the task force and from the Asylum Seeker Centre in Newtown has just recently put out media releases about it and signing it. So that's why it's come late, and it's urgent because it affects people's lives.
Okay.
May I speak, or are we talking on urgency?
Talking on urgency. So if it gets the urgency tick, then you can speak. Okay. Well, I'm happy to put it to the councillors. I'm not offended. It's writing a letter. I don't think that's a big issue. Other councillors happy to give it the urgency tag? Show of hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think it's pretty much unanimous. Okay. Councillor De Cruz, do you want to speak to it?
Okay, and yes, so the motion is to co-sign a letter, the open letter to the Prime Minister that's been put forward by the Refugee Council, and to also sign the letter of support being coordinated by the local government mayoral task force supporting people seeking asylum that's based in Victoria but has membership in New South Wales, and we've previously resolved to be part of that task force, albeit sort of like an associate member rather than a full member. Okay. So the letter came from them to asking us to support this motion, to support the open letter, and the open letter. And what it's seeking is for access to Medicare for asylum seekers and refugees. And I think we'd all understand why access to Medicare is so important. It means that people can attend a GP clinic to get medical attention and not need to go to emergency hospitals or whatever else to put extra load on our hospital systems.
All right.
And also income support for those out of work. Again, for those asylum seekers and refugees who've got jobs, Some of them have lost their jobs. It's quite sad who has lost their jobs in this climate. So that's the second point, and looking at visa security to assist people to deal with the access to COVID-19 treatment.
Okay.
So yes, and speaking to Councillor Passer, she felt that we could do more to support the Asylum Seeker Centre, who's been quite inundated, along with all our other charities in the Inner West, to promote what they're doing and to encourage, which they're also seeking to encourage the community to write to the Minister and the Prime Minister to support the open letter.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
point 2 that I've
May I
decided
speak?
to go
Thank
on,
you.
so Claire.
Okay, Councillor
Thank
Passis,
you.
you'd like to speak? Yes. Thank you. Councillor Passis, please press the button.
When Councillor Cruz contacted me on this motion, I did not have a problem with him, but I did say to her, I do not believe that our government, and let's get this clear, whether Labor or Liberal was in, would be started that we would have people out there that we are not looking after. I telephoned a minister's office and I was told, and I will read word for word, holders of temporary protection visas or safe haven enterprise visas remain eligible to access special benefit payments if they are experiencing severe hardship. Holders of these visas are also able to access Medicare. I don't know if there's politics coming into this, but I did say, and Councillor Cruz, De Cruz can clarify this, I do not believe any Australian government would have people out there in our community that are hungry and that are not being looked after in these times. I don't have a problem supporting this motion. It's a letter, but we must get our facts right. We are a caring country, and I will repeat, I do not believe Labor or Liberal would have anybody out there suffering, especially people that they're not Australian citizens, visa holders. And I know for a fact that we are giving millions and millions to Red Cross and other charitable organisations that also look after these people. So excuse me, I will support this, but I do believe before councillors put things up to council, whether they're approached by any organisation, all the facts and the truth should be told.
Okay. Thank you, Pam.
As I said, I don't have a problem with a letter going, just so it can clarify, because what I've just read out, I believe you are going to receive back from the government that they are fulfilling their Christian duty of looking after everyone. And really, Councillor De Cruz, that you are sincere in putting this motion up, but I have a problem maybe where it's coming from.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers on this item? I'm happy to second it just to get it on the board. Anyone else want to speak on it? If no one else wants to speak on it, I'll put it to the vote.
Yes, I'll speak to it very briefly.
Okay, Councillor, I've got Councillor Steer and then I've got Councillor Hesse.
Yes, I just want to speak to this very briefly. What people don't realise is that refugees and asylum seekers who are allowed to live in our community have been approved as refugees. Their claims have been approved and they have been found to be refugees, but they are still not allowed to access Centrelink or other government services, and they must rely on charity or on their own efforts to find work in order to survive for a given period before they are made permanent residents, which can take several years. So they do live in a very precarious position, because if they do lose their jobs or if they cannot find jobs, or if they have to rely on charity, they live from hand to mouth, and they don't have any security. So what this motion is trying to do is to redress that, to enable them to be cared for during a situation that nobody could have predicted, that has taken us all by surprise, and where it is generally agreed that everybody in our community needs help to survive this very difficult period. And that is why I hope that everyone supports this, for the reasons that Councillor Cruz has said, that these people are the most disadvantaged because they do not have any other resources. If they don't have an income, if they don't have if they don't have community support, then they will be absolutely destitute, and that does not help them, and it makes a mockery of making them upholding their claims as refugees in the first place. So that's why this is necessary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hesse. Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. No, that's okay. All good. So we put it to the vote then.
Could you read out the motion, please?
The Refugee Council, that Council co-sign a Refugee Council's open letter to the Prime Minister Scott Morrison, nobody left behind. B, the letter supporting being coordinated by the local government mayoral task force supporting people seeking asylum. To add the link to Council's website for the Asylum Seekers Centre media release support for open letter. The plea to the government to provide safety net for everyone, including seeking asylum. Is that okay, Councillor Passos? Okay. All right, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, lift your hands. I can see that it's looking unanimous. Yep, unanimous. Okay. Now, there's no more urgency tonight. We're all done.
Could you tell me what's next on the agenda?
It's the confidential item, which is the funding for the Haberfield Library, or the work for the Haberfield Library.
And what other items are there?
That's it.
Chair, we'll just need to have a short 1 minute adjournment so we can let people on the live stream know that we're moving into confidential and closing off the live stream.
Do we need to move into confidential? Are there councillors that need to talk about the tender? If not, we can just adopt the recommendation without going.
Can I just, are we talking about the tender, or we're talking about the funding?
No, the tender.
Oh, okay.
So do we need to go into confidential session? Are there questions that councillors want to ask about the tender, or are they happy with the recommendation and we just adopt the recommendation as written?
Could you read out the recommendation?
No, I can't, because that's in the confidential section.
It's a recommendation to accept the
recommendation
of the tender.
That's right.
Well, I'll test it if you wish, Councillor. I move the recommendation in relation to the tender for the Haberfield Library.
I'll second it. Do we have anyone that wants to go into confidential session to ask questions on it? If not, we don't have to deny the community and keep them up. We can just let them know the library's on the way.
If it's the last item, let's go into confidential session.
Do you have any particular questions you have to ask?
No, well, I don't have the agenda in front of me.
Well, there's no point. Does any other councillor want to go into confidential session on this item?
No.
No. No. I'm looking and everyone said no. So I'm happy to go with what Councillor Jury moved. We'll put it to the vote. All lift your hands. So I've got Councillor Stamolis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor Kiat, Councillor Skander, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Rosidi, Councillor Porteous, Councillor York. And who have I missed on the first page? Councillor De Cruz, myself, Councillor Jury, Councillor Passos, and Councillor Steer. Okay, I'll declare that unanimous.
I believe Julie was against.
No, Julie was in favour, weren't you, Julie? I can't hear you, Julie. Can you press the button?
Yes, I'm glad Councillor Kiat keeps his eye on me. I'm living rent-free in his head too.
So is that against or you're for?
I'm for.
For, yes, she's for. Sorry, Tom. And that, I think, is the end of the meeting, people, at 9:32.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everyone.